Chapter 698. When the mysterious yellow hand slammed down, a loud noise resounded. For a moment, the mountains shook and the earth quaked. Even the few altars on the mountain peak trembled violently. Many of the junior disciples could not stand steadily, and a large number of them uniformly fell down. With just one hit, the entire array was on the verge of collapsing. At this moment, the Xianyu sect's cultivators just now understood what Zhang Yan was trying to do. Their faces changed. Rong Juanzhong's strategy of defending and retreating wasn't too bad. As long as they had control of the way out of the mountain, they could send some of the disciples to stay here while the rest went to take care of the various sects in the country of Chu. Zhong Tai went all out this time. There was no one to watch the back. It wouldn't be long before Xianyu sect could unify the two sections. It was a good plan. However, they didn't expect Zhang Yan to be so ferocious. He actually wanted to break the array by force. Yang Shuyong was frightened. He shouted madly, "Guards, guards, quickly protect the formation for me, protect the formation." It was originally set up hastily, and it was only connected by the altar and the restrictive formation. It was fine to deal with ordinary attacks, but it was difficult to resist the enormous hand that shook the heavens. Moreover, even the unusually thick and heavy cloud-like curtain had dispersed quite a bit when the palm descended. Zhang Yan could vaguely see the situation inside the array. There were cultivators flying everywhere. It was a mess. However, after a while, it was covered up again. It was obvious that the cultivators inside were using their mana to maintain the array. He grinned and manipulated the qi in his body. He raised his giant hand again and slammed it down again. This attack was much stronger than the last one. Many of the weaker disciples were hit by the recoil. They spat out blood and fell to the ground. Yang Shuyong's eyebrows were twitching. The restrictive formation was already on the verge of breaking, and now it was like adding snow to snow. If another attack came, no matter how he looked at it, it wouldn't be able to withstand it. He immediately pointed to the sky and ordered, "Men, go up and stop him." Rong Juanzhong felt it was inappropriate. Zhang Yan was protected by the evil bug. If there were too few people, they would be sending themselves to their deaths. Not only would it be useless, it would weaken their forces. Instead, it would weaken their own forces. He immediately dissuaded, "Sect leader, you can't." Displeased, Yang Shu said, "Rong Zhenren, just now we'll do as you say." They retreated to the mountain. But it couldn't stop this person at all. "Since you say this method won't work, then give me a feasible plan." Rong Juanzhong's mind raced as he thought of a delaying tactic. He said in a deep voice, "I've got it." Time was of the essence, so he didn't have much time to explain. He pulled a cultivator over and whispered a few words to him. The cultivator was taken aback and hesitated. Rong Juanzhong noticed his reluctance and threatened, "You are afraid of Priest Zhang, but are you not afraid of me?" The cultivator trembled and bowed. Yes, I will go now." When he finished, he bit the bullet and flew out of the forbidden formation. He looked at Zhang Yan's figure in midair and said calmly, "Wait, Zhenren Zhang. I have something to say." Zhang Yan looked over and realized that he recognized this person. He was Lan Jianguang, who won the first round of the battle. He said, "So it's Brother Lan, what can I do for you?" Lan Jianguang fearfully glanced at the yellow hand hanging high in the air. He carefully cupped his hands and said, "Spiritual Master Zhang, I have to remind Spiritual Master that according to the rules of the battle, this mountain boundary is already the land of my Xianyu. As long as Spiritual Master takes a step in, Zhong Tai will lose and the people in the sect will be at my disposal. Spiritual Master should think carefully. Even if you dismantle the forbidden formation, you can't reverse Zhong Tai's defeat." He was afraid that Zhang Yan couldn't hear him, so he shouted with all his might. Even the cultivators on the Paleo flying carriage could vaguely hear him. Elder Yen couldn't help but frown. This is bad. Xianyu wants to use the rules of the battle to control Zhenren Zhang. Zhang Yan was someone who signed the contract and could be considered a cultivator of Zhong Tai. If he violated the rules set by the two sects masters, it would be considered a violation of the promise. Xianyu couldn't do anything to him, but Zhong Tai lost. If it was another person, Yang Shuyong and the others would love for the other person to violate the promise. However, the person in front of them was too strong. After breaking the formation, if he focused on killing, they didn't know how many of them could escape. For the lives of the cultivators in their sects, they had to use this as a threat. Sect Master Qiao smiled bitterly. Just now, Zhenren Zhang is too ruthless. Everyone present agreed. Zhang Yan alone killed nearly half of Xian Yu's cultivators with his sword. No one dared to come out. He was truly fierce. After Zhang Yan finished listening, he smiled faintly. Are you done? Lan Jianguang couldn't tell what he was thinking. He could only retreat while saying, yes, yes. Zhang Yan nodded and no longer paid any attention to him. He flicked his sleeves, and the mysterious yellow hand above the sky crashed down. Lan Jianguang turned pale with fright. He turned into a ray of light and fled back into the formation. Rong Juanzhong looked at the incoming palm and knew that his plan couldn't block it. He made a prompt decision. Sect Master, retreat quickly. Yang Shuyong didn't say anything and turned into a ray of light. Seeing that even the sect master was escaping, everyone else also rushed to fly away from the mountaintop. They didn't go far before they felt the top of their heads turn dark. There was a loud explosion behind them, so loud that their eardrums felt like they were going to burst. Looking back, they saw the rocks collapsing, the trees falling, and the dust and gravel flying everywhere. When the dust settled, everyone realized that a part of the mountain top had been slapped away. The restrictive formation altar on the mountain had been completely shattered. This great power shocked everyone. Rong Juanzhong looked up. He noticed that after Zhang Yan destroyed the restrictive formation, his figure was still in midair. He didn't make any other moves. After pondering for a while, he became spirited and said, Sect Master, just now, those words were useful. Yang Shuyong also realized that although Zhang Yan had destroyed the restrictive formation, he didn't attack. This meant that he had some scruples and didn't dare to cross the line. Just now could only be regarded as him venting his anger. He couldn't help but laugh wildly. What can I do? What can I do? Many disciples laughed along with him. However, if they looked closely, they could see a trace of fear hidden in their eyes. The reason for their exaggerated actions was just now's release of emotions after escaping death. Rong Juanzhong was not as optimistic as Yang Shuyong in the face of such a formidable enemy. He could not afford to be careless at all. He found a few cultivators who were on good terms with him and said, It's enough to have me and the sect master here. Quickly send people over and try to invade the various celestial cities in Zhongtai. Remember not to use my Xian Yu's men to prevent others from gossiping. Also, don't touch Hope Voice Mountain. During the battle, he made use of cultivators from outside the sect to plot against the opponent's immortal city. I will do the same. Therefore, when the two sides set the rules, both of them tacitly avoided talking about it. As for Hope Voice Mountain, it was the most important place in Zhongtai. There were people from the heavenly abode overseeing it. Xian Yu didn't dare to provoke him. Zhang Yan slowly swept his gaze over. Xian Yu's 100 disciples and 20 Yuanian cultivators had retreated to the back of the mountain. Do you think that if I don't step into your mountain world, I won't be able to restrain you? He narrowed his eyes. He might as well focus and adjust his breathing here and use his spiritual opportunity. Seeing him standing in the clouds, not retreating nor coming up, a thought appeared in Chunyuji's mind and he blurted out, Could it be that his mana is running out? He turned his head and said, Sect Master, why don't we take this chance? Oh? Yang Shuyong took a few glances and felt that it was the case. Spiritual chi gales flowed like tides, and the rumbling sound was endless. For a moment, the two of them fell into a battle of mana. Such a shocking scene caused everyone to be dumbfounded. Especially the disciples of the two sects, their expressions were even more lifeless. Moving mountains and uprooting mountains and rivers. Such methods of battle had already far exceeded their imagination. Zhang Yan had expected Rong Juanzhong to stop him. However, he did not stop there. He laughed in the air and said, How can such a small technique stop me? he suddenly shouted loudly. His voice was like a clap of thunder. He suddenly activated his mana, and with a rumble, the place where the two of them were fighting was empty. The entire mountain peak had actually been forcefully escaped by him using the 5 elements escape technique. P.S. Chapter 699. Rong Juanzhong's mana was originally wrapped around the mountain, but the mountain suddenly disappeared in front of him. It was as if all the energy in his body landed on empty air. It was extremely uncomfortable, and he couldn't help but let out a muffled groan as a trickle of blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. At this instant, he instantly knew that he'd revealed a flaw. He'd suffered a loss at Zhang Yan's hands earlier, so at this moment, he'd already become extremely vigilant in his heart. He didn't even raise his head before raising his hand and withdrawing a magnificent treasure tree that emitted a multicolored glow. It had jade branches, jade leaves, golden flowers, and silver fruits, and it glowed with a bright light. It emanated a 30 m-long aura of treasures that protected his body within it. Just as he finished this action, a fierce sword light came out of nowhere and suddenly arrived. With a clang, it slashed on the treasure chi. The branch of the treasure tree swayed and trembled, but in the end, it didn't break. Although he was prepared, Rong Juanzhong broke out in a cold sweat. Fortunately, he reacted in time. If he was one step slower, he would have died under the sword. Looking at the empty space in front of him, he was shocked and knew that things were not good. The mountain was moved elsewhere, and the barrier that blocked Zhong Tai was no longer useful. At this moment, his choice was to fight to the death, or retreat to the back of the mountain and find a countermeasure. He thought quickly and felt that he wasn't prepared enough, so it wasn't a good time to fight with Zhang Yan. Thus, he decisively took out a movement talisman and used his mana. A shining spiritual light wrapped around his body, and like a meteor, he flew back to the mountain behind him. Zhang Yan saw that he was hiding in the formation again, and the mountain road in front of him was cleared. He didn't chase after him, so he thought for a moment and waved his sleeve, returning to the Pusho flying carriage. When he got on the carriage, sect leader Qiao led the cultivators to greet him. At this moment, when they faced Zhang Yan, they didn't dare to look at him in the same way as before. All of them were terrified by the divine abilities he revealed. Sect leader Qiao carefully flattered him and invited him to take a seat before sitting down himself. Then he cautiously asked, "Spiritual Master Zhang, what should Zhong Tai do now?" Zhang Yan smiled. "This is a matter between your sect and Xianyu. If sect leader Qiao wants to return to Zhong Tai, I will protect you." Sect leader Qiao hesitated for a moment. To be honest, after he saw Zhang Yenshin's ability, he really wanted to rely on his ability to completely destroy Xianyu. However, Zhong Tai was still in a precarious situation just now. If he wanted to get rid of his opponent now, it would be too much. It was really hard for him to say anything. Elder Yen knew that he was in a difficult position. He came forward and bowed deeply to Zhang Yan, saying, "This Yen has been rude. Dare I ask, is Reverend willing to help me defeat Xianyu?" Elder Yen knew he was in a difficult position, so he came up and bowed deeply of Zhong Tai. "Master of Zhong Tai, he said. "Master," he said. Zhong of Master, Zhong of Yen, Juanha. Tai of Master of Zhong of Tai. The meaning behind his words was that he didn't mind continuing to be Zhong Tai's sharp sword, but this time he came with a plan, so he couldn't do it for free. Sect leader Qiao and his wife were pleasantly surprised when they heard that. Since this person had a request, then it was easy to deal with. Zhong Tai's thousands of years of accumulation would definitely satisfy him. He immediately stood up and said seriously, "As long as Zhenren Zhang can help my Zhong Tai defeat Xianyu, all the things that you need will be given with all the strength of the sect." Zhang Yan glanced at him. Sect leader Qiao obviously wanted to tie him and Zhong Tai together, but this did not conflict with his goal. In order to cultivate the Dharmakaya of Yuanjin, he needed quite a number of the 3 types of spiritual medicine. If he were to rely on his own strength to collect them, he would only barely be able to maintain it. Sometimes, because he was not familiar with the internal affairs of Dongsheng, his hands and feet were tied. With the help of Zhong Tai, a sect that was entrenched in this continent, it was obviously more suitable than him. He nodded and said, "If that's the case, then I will agree to it. Outside Sleeping Star Mountain, Luo Dongchuan paced back and forth, puzzled. Why hasn't Aunt sent the letter yet? Could it be that something has happened? In his opinion, with Xian Yu's strength, Xian Yu should have already forced Zhong Tai into a hopeless situation. However, he still hadn't received any message from Xian Yu, so he couldn't help but feel slightly anxious. Unfortunately, the inside and outside of the mountain were sealed by the Prohibition Formation, so he had no way to investigate. He was not worried about the safety of that ant, but he was afraid that Zhong Tai would be destroyed by Xian Yu, causing the Python Division's plan to fail. Hui Xian Elder was not anxious and said in a deep voice, "Since it is your sex talisman, no matter what Xiao Huanzhuan is planning, it will be able to wrap her up. Why does brother need to be anxious?" Luo Dongchuan grinned and said, "Maybe it is not the right time yet. All right, let's wait a little longer." Hui Xian Elder looked at Sleeping Star Mountain that was 30 miles away. He did not know why, but he felt that he had overlooked something. But he could not figure out what the problem was. He shook his head and said, "Maybe I am thinking too much." After Rong Juanzhong returned to the mountain, he went straight to the altar and sat down to think about the various methods that Zhang Yan used in the fight just now. After a while, he already had a countermeasure and thought, "Just now I do not know your methods, but it is not necessarily that I am inferior to you. Let's fight again and see who is the winner." After making up his mind, he went to see Yang Shuyong. However, when he arrived at the sect leader's altar, he saw Yang Shuyong sitting on a rock, gnashing his teeth in anger. He didn't know what he was cursing. Rong Juanzhong sighed and said, "I did not expect that Priest Zhang to have the ability to move the mountains and overturn the seas. This fight is going to fail on the verge of success. No wonder sect leader is like this." He took a few steps forward and cupped his hands together. "Sect leader, I have a request. Can I borrow the 3 Mountain Chi suppressing tablet?" Yang Shuyong came back to his senses. He frowned and asked, "Zhenren Rong, what do you want this thing for?" Although the 3 Mountain Chi suppressing tablet was a magical treasure that could change the weather and bring favorable weather, it could only be used by mortals. To cultivators of Xian, it was of little value. He had never taken it to heart. Usually, when a few of his confidants came to borrow it for fun, he did not think much of it. But at this moment, Rong Juanzhong suddenly asked for it, which made him feel a little strange. This matter was originally a secret, and Rong Juanzhong did not want to say it. But he was forced into this situation by Zhang Yan. If he did not think of a way to save the situation, Xian Yu would inevitably be defeated. Surnamed Suo said frankly, "If my sect's 3 sounds 3 sky thunder has the help of this item, it can be used in the wind and rain, and its power can be increased by 30%. In this way, I have the confidence to fight that priest Zhang." Yang Shuyong was shocked when he heard this. He immediately stood up and stared at him. He said coldly, "Why have I not heard you mention this before? A magical treasure can increase the power of thunder?" Even he, as the headmaster, did not know about this matter. If he knew this item was so important, why would he give it to his child to play with? Rong Juanzhong said sincerely, "Headmaster, it is not that I do not want to say it, but Zhenren he has taken care of it." As for the reason, Zhenren did not say it clearly. When Yang Shuyong heard that it was Zhenren Dongtian's arrangement, his expression became slightly better. And now was not the time to pursue the matter, so he thought for a while and said, "Okay, I will get it for you now." He immediately called for someone and ordered him to go get it. Not long after, that person came back, but his hands were empty. Yang Shuyong said angrily, "Where is the magical treasure?" That person lowered his head and said, "I went to ask for it, but Miss Yang was unwilling, so..." Before he finished speaking, Yang Shuyong knew that his daughter was being petty again. He stomped his feet and had to go get it himself. Not long after, he turned back with a dark face and handed the 3 Mountain Chi suppressing tablet to Rong Juanzhong. He said in a deep voice, "Zhenren Rong, you are the mainstay of Xian Yu. This battle cannot be lost. Do you understand?" Rong Juanzhong was on guard and nodded seriously. Yang Shuyong looked at the sky and said, "It is getting late. Zhenren, do you want to meditate and fight tomorrow?" Rong Juanzhong disagreed and said, "There is no need. Zhang Daoist has continuously used his supernatural powers and techniques, so he must be more tired than me. We can go and challenge him. If we miss today, when his mana recovers, it will be even more difficult to deal with him. Yang Shuyong saw that what he said made sense, so he did not stop him and raised his hands to salute him. Rong Jun bowed deeply and looked at his disciples a few more times. Then, he leaped up and turned into a ray of light that flew away. When he reached the clouds, he shouted towards the stage, "Zhenren Zhang, just now I hastily accepted the challenge and allowed you to take advantage of me. Now that I think about it, I'm not convinced. I wonder if Zhenren dares to fight again?" Zhang Yan raised his eyebrows. He had originally wanted to fight Xian Yu, but Rong Juanzhong's request was exactly what he wanted. Unlike what Rong Juanzhong thought, although he had used his supernatural powers a few times, he had a first-grade golden core after all. His foundation was there, and his mana had not been depleted much. Elder Bai said cautiously, "Just now, Rong Juanzhong retreated in panic when facing Priest Zhang, but now he dares to challenge me. Is there some trick up his sleeve?" Zhang Yan smiled. Ever since he came to Dongxing, he had not met an opponent who could fight him. Just now watching the battle, he could feel that Rong Juanzhong was still holding back. If he really had some powerful tricks up his sleeve, he would not hesitate to take a look. He stood up from his seat and said loudly, "Since Zhenren Rong wants to determine a winner, I will accompany you to the end." As soon as he finished speaking, a cloud appeared under his feet and lifted his body. He floated up and stood not far away from Rong Juanzhong. All the cultivators below stared at the battle intently. The fate of the two sects would be decided by this battle. Rong Juanzhong did not say much. He bowed to the front and took out the treasure tree. He did not move forward, but quickly retreated. When he was more than 10 li away, he held the jade tablet with both hands and rubbed it back and forth. Immediately, a pillar of spiritual light shot into the sky. It shook again, and in a split second, the weather changed. Fog filled the air and heavy clouds pressed down from the sky. Not long after, the area within a radius of more than 10 miles was covered in fog. Even his figure was completely hidden. Just now, Rong Juanzhong had not told Yang Shuyong about one thing. After reaching the 3rd grade, this treasure would be of great help to the sect's Xian technique, the 3 Guang Hui essentials. However, those who had reached the stage before were all under an oath, so they kept their mouths shut. Especially the Tri-Note Tri-Sky Lightning of the sect. After he obtained the assistance of this treasure, the two of them could be combined to attain a shapeless state, and its might was practically not inferior to the divine ability passed down by founding ancestor Dami. Only by relying on this did he have the confidence to fight Zhang Yan. Zhang Yan originally wanted to use the purple cloud thunder to defeat the enemy. However, he remembered that the treasure tree in Rong Juanzhong's hand was not an ordinary item. If he could not find its source, he might not be able to use it. However, he had many tricks up his sleeves. Even if he did not use this method, he still had ways to deal with Rong Juanzhong. He smiled and said, "Brother Rong, are you trying to bully I because I do not know this? Then let's give it a try. Let's see whose Dao technique is better." As soon as he finished speaking, he shouted and raised his hand to form a spell. Immediately, clouds of thick fog surged out from his body. The sound of muffled thunder came from inside the fog, like the beating of a drum. There were also flashes of lightning. The sound was shocking. Then it rolled and spread out. In just a moment, it covered the entire mountain. Chapter 700. Zhang Yan and Rong Juanzhong both created thick clouds and fog. Heaven and earth were filled with turbid air, as if they had entered the netherworld. The sky was dark and gloomy. The cultivators from the two sects could not see anything except for a vast expanse of whiteness. High-quality update. Rong Juanzhong had the help of the 3-mountain chi suppressing tablet. It was as if he had sunk into warm water. Not only did he recover his energy, but he also felt that he could control his mana freely. As long as he had this treasure in hand, he would not be afraid of his peers. Although he was confident, he did not dare to be careless in view of his opponent's strength. Looking around, there was haze everywhere, making it difficult to identify. He could not see Zhang Yan's figure, but he was not in a hurry. With the change of the weather, his opponent would not be able to find him. Moreover, he had the ability to seal the heaven and earth. Under the cover of his mana, as long as anyone was within 5 miles of him, he would be able to know where they were. Just now, Zhang Yan's sword had left a deep impression on him. With the cover of the fog, it could be said that his opponent's advantage was greatly limited. He thought to himself, with the help of the treasure from my sect, my mana did not decrease, but increased. On the other hand, you will be exhausted after a long battle. As long as I can drag the battle and slowly fight with you, I don't believe that I can't defeat you. He observed Zhang Yan's techniques and found that they were all extremely powerful and difficult to break. If he were to fight them head-on, he would not be able to shake them. Therefore, he came up with this plan to find a way to wear down his opponent. At this moment, the waves of clouds that rumbled ceaselessly surged over, and there were countless lightning snakes swimming about within them. They crackled and flickered as they swiftly shot over. Immediately, over 10 golden lights struck the treasured light, causing it to tremble and flicker. Rong Juanzhong held his breath and did not move. He was knowledgeable and could see that this Dao technique had a wide range and there was no way to avoid it. Moreover, he was in a hurry and was not good at escaping. Therefore, he relied on the protection of the treasure tree and stood still, so that his opponent would not be able to detect his location. This spell was extremely powerful, and he firmly believed that it was impossible for Zhang Yan to use it endlessly. Once he was exhausted, he would be able to counterattack. Zhang Yan's billowing cloud technique was capable of producing bolts of lightning, and even though it was more than enough to deal with ordinary cultivators, he was clearly aware that it wasn't enough to deal with this third-level Yuanine cultivator. High-quality updates using this technique was firstly to confuse the other party's eyes and ears and conceal himself. Secondly, it was also to oppose the other party. Thirdly, it was to find the other party's hiding place. After a while, seeing that there was no movement in the fog for a long time, he changed his mind. Since this person didn't want to show himself, he could only force him out. He waved his sleeve, and the blood-thread gold insects beside him rushed forward, scurrying in all directions. These insects could smell the blood, flesh, and spiritual qi of a living person. They could be used to search for Rong Juanzhong. After a while, Rong Juanzhong saw many of the blood-thread gold insects flying not far from him. He could not help but sneer. Just now, seeing the power of these insects, he still had a lingering fear. Now that he had taken the initiative to fight with Zhang Yan, how could he not be prepared for this move? He took out half a scoop of a gourd from his sleeve and a jade pot made of mutton fat. He poured half of the wine into the pot, and a fragrant aroma filled the air. He chanted a spell and shook the 3 mountains qi suppressing tablet. The mellow wine flew into the clouds, and then turned into a heavy rain that fell. The blood-thread gold insects acted on instinct. They felt that the rain was full of spiritual qi, and they greedily sucked it in. After a while, as if they were drunk, they first spun on the spot, and then fell one after another. Zhang Yan immediately noticed this change, and he smiled nonchalantly. If this method did not work, he could just change to another method. He lifted his body and flew to the sky. He waved his sleeve, and in an instant, the golden hand was formed again. It grew to a size of 20 miles, and almost covered the entire valley. He pointed downwards, and with a strong wind, it went straight into the depths of the mist. Rong Juanzhong immediately noticed the movement above him. Now that his mana had increased, he was naturally not afraid. He steadily stood up and took out the 3-fingered fork. He used the 3 transformations of mountain, cloud, and earthquake at the same time, and turned it into a 3-fingered giant hand that was made of clouds and smoke. He did not show any weakness, and faced the attack head-on. With a loud bang, the 2 giant hands of mana collided, and there was an earth-shattering sound. At the place where the 2 collided, there were circles of ripples. Being hit by the torrent, the clouds in the sky surged like the sea, and it looked like it was boiling. It lasted for a long time. The high-quality update was just around the corner. Under Zhang Yan's probing, he found out that Rong Juanzhong was still hiding in the mist, and did not hide in the mountains on either side. If that was the case, then he could launch a follow-up attack. Now that his mana was not the same as before, under the attack of the golden hand, there was no sign of damage. He used his mana, and changed from a slap to a claw, and the 5 fingers suddenly closed. Rong Juanzhong frowned. Even with the protection of the precious tree, he did not dare to take such an attack head-on. He could only take out the 3-fingered fork again, and use the earthquake incantation. He drove the force to one point, and chiseled the giant hand. After a dozen consecutive attacks, he saw that the yellow smoke was gradually thinning. Then, the treasure fork turned into the size of a mountain, and fiercely slammed into it. With a loud bang, it finally shattered the giant hand, as if it had broken through a city gate. Zhang Yan smiled. After a series of probing, he roughly determined the opponent's position. He shouted, and his body turned into a ray of light, and flew in that direction. As soon as he was near, Rong Juanzhong sensed him, and his expression froze. If Rong Juanzhong found him, then the previous arrangements would be useless. Therefore, he immediately used his mana, and used the heaven and earth locking technique. Although he knew that he might not be able to do anything to Rong Juanzhong, as long as he could restrain him for a while, he could increase the distance between them and hide again. Zhang Yan suddenly felt his body sink, and he suddenly smiled, and used the 5 elements escape technique. This supernatural power was the #1 escape technique in Qinsong school. Those who practiced it were not afraid of being trapped. However, if it was someone else who did not have enough qi of the 5 elements, it would be useless. But Rong Juanzhong was different. With the 5 elements Tai Shen technique as the foundation, he could use it purely with mana. Now that he used it, there was a miraculous effect, and in an instant, there was no restraint. After breaking this technique, he rushed another 1,000 feet, but still did not see Rong Juanzhong's shadow. Fearing that he would escape, a sword ray flew out, and in an instant, it turned into 32 light wheels. Then, like an arrow, it flew out, and scattered in all directions. The cultivators of Xianyu sect were not good at escape techniques. Even if Rong Juanzhong fought with his Yuanyin body, he could not be faster than Rong Juanzhong's sword escape technique. If there was no other way to deal with it, once Rong Juanzhong's sword ray wrapped around him, he would not be able to escape. These changes were extremely fast. Rong Juanzhong did not expect that the confinement technique would not be able to stop Zhang Yan. While he was stunned, a sword ray had already flown over, and with a clang, it hit the treasure ray. Not good. Rong Juanzhong knew that the opponent in front of him was not like others. When he fought, he was decisive and fierce, and he was very experienced. Once he was in front of him, he would not give him a chance to pull away. Should he leave or stay? No, they had only fought for a short while, and Zhang Yan's mana had not been depleted much. It was far from the point of a life and death battle. If he left, he could only use the 3-sound 3-sky thunder to attack him head-on and stall him. Only then would he be able to leave. However, he had originally planned to use this technique at a critical moment, but once he used it now, his opponent would be able to see through this technique in advance. During a fight, the situation could change in an instant, and there was no room for hesitation. He changed his mind and made a decision. His original strategy would not change, and he would avoid the sharp edge for the time being. He would look for an opportunity later. He shouted softly and waved his hand. Suddenly, there was a burst of thunder, as if there were countless lightning strikes from all directions. However, he could only hear the sound, and he could not see the shape. He did not know where it came from, and he did not know where it came from. There was not even the slightest fluctuation of spiritual vigor. The sound was getting louder and louder, as if thousands of thunder had burst forth. In a short while, the heaven and earth shook. At the same time, he pinched a spell, and the Yuanyin body turned into a ray of light and disappeared in the blink of an eye. When Zhang Yan heard the thunder, he felt the sword pillin between his brows trembling, and the sound was endless. A ray of light flashed in his eyes, and the earth-splitting Chenkuan leaf flew out from the high cloud. A ray of golden light shone down, and it covered him. In a short while, the rumbling sound was heard around him, and it was endless. However, it could not break through the thin layer of golden light curtain. He looked around, and the sword gleams flew around, interweaving into a net. However, there was no trace of Rong Juanzhong, and it was obvious that he had left the place. He thought to himself, "This thunder technique is much more powerful than what I saw just now. It must be a hidden trick." Rong Juanzhong placed him here, but he did not follow up with a backup plan. He must be trying to stop me. It seems like he is not in a hurry to win, but he is taking advantage of the favorable time and place to slowly deal with me. He almost immediately guessed what Rong Juanzhong was thinking. If a Yuanying third-grade cultivator were to put down his pride and fight with all his heart, it would be difficult to kill him. However, it was not impossible to break through. Zhang Yan's eyes flickered slightly. He waved his hand and actually put away the heaven and earth leaf. He didn't summon the protective light around his body. Instead, he allowed the lightning to strike him. His body only shook a few times before he stood firm again. He had already cultivated to the 4th grade of the spirit contract, and his body was strong and solid. Moreover, he had 2 layers of protective clothing on him, so he was still standing after being hit by the thunder. He judged that the thunder technique should be done by Rong Juanzhong casually. If it was a full-force attack, it would be more powerful, but it would not be easy to hurt him. Both of them fought for a round, and it seemed like they were evenly matched. However, he was able to peek into the details of his opponent's thunder technique, and he actually had the advantage. He pondered for a while, then took out a few talismans from his sleeves. He flicked his fingers, and the talismans turned into streams of light that dispersed in all directions. After doing all this, he raised his head and looked into the depths of the mist. He squinted his eyes and said, "Let's see where you can hide this time." After Rong Juanzhong retreated far away, he did not see Zhang Yan coming to find him again. He was a little suspicious, but after thinking about it again, he had a thought. Could it be that his mana is already exhausted? He then shook his head. This opponent was not that simple. He would rather be more careful than be rash. However, to know whether it was true, he could test it a few times first. After confirming it, he would then make his move. He fumbled in his sleeve for a while and took out a talisman. He slapped it on his palm, and a cloud of filthy air emerged from it. It rose to the sky and turned into 4 skinny red-eyed monsters with huge hands and feet and long horns on their heads. Their bodies gradually turned from illusory to corporeal. This item was the treasure of the Fuyang sect in the past. Each of the monsters was refined from the primordial spirit of a Yuanying cultivator. Each of them was extremely strong, and they loved to eat the brains of cultivators. They were extremely vicious. Because it was an item of the evil sect, as a cultivator of Xianyu, it was not appropriate for him to use it openly. The reason why he created the mist earlier was also to hide it. Not long after, the 4 monsters had solidified. Their eyes slowly revealed a fierce glint, and they emitted a ferocious aura. Rong Juanzhong was also shocked. He did not dare to keep the item by his side. He used a spell to control the 4 monsters, and they disappeared without a trace. Chapter 701. After the 4 demons turned into evil spirits, they lost their humanity and only had the thought of finding food to satisfy their hunger. Following a thread of inspiration, they rushed towards where Zhang Yan was hiding. In just a few miles, they arrived in a flash. The monsters didn't conceal their presence at all. As soon as they got close, Zhang Yan sensed them. He focused his gaze and saw 4 ferocious-looking things that looked like humans but weren't, like ghosts but weren't. They leaped over and surrounded him. Even though he was surrounded by 4 monsters, he still looked calm and composed. He had fought with the disciples of the demon doctrine in Donghua continent many times. With one look, he knew that these were demons that were refined with evil methods. Although the demons surrounded him, they seemed to be afraid of something and hesitated to move forward. They bent down and circled around him. After a while, none of them dared to come forward. One of them was especially fierce. It wanted to pounce a few times, but after a few screams, it retreated. The stalemate continued for a while. The devils seemed to be extremely afraid of him. They crouched down and wanted to retreat. Zhang Yan smiled and said, "Since you are in front of me, how can I let you leave?" There was a loud sound like the collapse of a dam. It was as if a flood of light surged out from his back and rushed forward. The 4 demons were extremely fast. When they sensed that something was wrong, they immediately turned into red mist and escaped. However, when they were halfway, 4 sword gleams chased after them and slashed at their bodies. Each of them was torn into 2 at the same time. However, they did not stop. The sword gleams split up and each of them produced a dozen streaks of cold lightning. They slashed back and forth, making it impossible for the demons to reform their bodies. At this moment, the water element true light surged over and with a rumble, all of them were sucked in. Zhang Yan's expression was calm as if he had done something unimportant. Although these monsters looked powerful and difficult to kill with ordinary methods, they posed no threat to him. He didn't know how to fight with others, and he didn't have any sharp weapons or magic treasures, so he could easily deal with them. He took out several pieces of talisman paper from his sleeve and tossed them out. He raised his finger and pointed at them a few times before they turned into light and flew away. There was nothing special about these talismans. They could not find Rong Juanzhong directly. However, as long as they sensed spiritual opportunity, they would send out a warning. If he was fighting with many opponents at the same time, these talismans would be useless. However, since there was only Rong Juanzhong, it was effective. Rong Juanzhong did not retreat far and was still 5 miles away. He kept an eye on Zhang Yan's movements. He was not afraid of being discovered because of the thick mist. If Rong Juanzhong chased after him, he would be able to escape in time. Now that the demon was dead, the talismans in his hand suddenly turned to dust. The fear in his eyes grew. He thought, this person's spell is really powerful. For a period of time, he was very careful. He flew back and forth and did not fight with Zhang Yan directly. From time to time, he would release a few spiritual cranes. Based on Zhang Yan's previous supernatural powers, he knew that a few spiritual cranes would not be able to harm him. At most, they would only cause him some trouble. Therefore, this was to put pressure on him from time to time. He wanted to wear down his spirit so that he could not relax and did not have the time to adjust his breathing. Zhang Yan was not in a hurry. He patiently dealt with the trouble his opponent threw in front of him. Not only that, he left a stack of talismans wherever he went. After Rong Juanzhong had been in the fog for a long time, he inadvertently caught a glimpse of a few talismans flying around. His pupils involuntarily shrank. His thoughts turned quickly and he immediately guessed the purpose of these talismans. He quickly released a few spiritual monkeys and they jumped around in all directions to confuse the eyes and ears of the people around him. Zhang Yan's heart skipped a beat. Suddenly, he felt that the talismans were acting strangely. Without any hesitation, he summoned his sword and flew towards the talismans. When he arrived, he saw that it was only a spiritual monkey. It was baring its teeth at him. He sneered and raised his sword to cut off the monkey's head. At this moment, there were a few other places that sensed something. He went to investigate one by one. In less than a minute, he had killed all the spiritual monkeys. Rong Juanzhong came down and used pearls and jades that were full of spiritual vigor to disturb them. However, they were all broken by Zhang Yan. After a few times, he did not have many tricks left. No matter where he went, he would be detected by the talismans. He had no choice but to retreat to the edge of the mountain boundary. There was a reason why he chose that place to fight. His aim was to exhaust Zhang Yan's mana. After a few rounds, if he felt that the time was not right, he could retreat into the mountain behind him to hide. If Zhang Yan chased after him, he would definitely destroy the mountain, and then he would have a chance to catch his breath. This battle involved the life and death of the two sects. It was not a matter for him alone. Naturally, he had to use all the means at his disposal. He had to make full use of all the advantages he had previously. After a while, he arrived at the edge of the mountain. He hesitated for a while and took out a jade pill. It was crystal clear and looked like glass. Inside it, a drop of blood could be faintly seen floating around. He looked at the item reluctantly. Finally, he sighed and held it in his palm. He blew a few breaths and it turned into a stag. It raised its head and raised its horns. It was handsome and had a strong body with 4 strong hooves. This stag was a gift from Shao Tsung Jing on his 500th birthday. It had always been a treasure. It was originally a strange beast in the North Underworld continent. Its size could be changed at will. It could fight with Yuanian cultivators. It had a pair of sharp horns on its head that could pierce through gold and stone. It could tear apart pythons and dragons. Now that it was released, it was prepared to hide at the side and help. Rong Juanzhong patted his back and whispered into the stag's ear, "Go hide at the side. Come out when I call for you." The stag looked at him and let out a cry. It leaped into the clouds and disappeared in an instant. Not long after, the clouds in front of him parted and a sword gleam flew over. It made a turn in the air and headed towards him. Rong Juanzhong knew the sharpness of the sword gleam. He did not dare to face it head-on. He activated his mana and activated the tree above him. The tree opened up like an umbrella. The tree shone brightly and blocked the sword gleam. He calmed his mind and followed the sword gleam outside. The sword gleam was like a heavy rain, but he did not move. This tree was also a protective weapon of the Xianyu school. It was called the Emerald Tree. It was once used by the master Dongtian He Zhuxiang. Unless it was a treasure, it would be very difficult to break. Even if it encountered the 6 famous swords of the Fengxiang Sword School, it would not be able to do anything to it. In just a few breaths, dozens of sword gleams flew over from afar. When they got close, they did not descend. Instead, they made a turn in the air and suddenly merged together. A handsome young Taoist with fluttering sleeves stepped out from the sword gleams. His eyes were like lightning as he looked over and said with a faint smile, "Fellow Taoist Rong, are you not going to leave?" Rong Juanzhong did not show any weakness. He waved his hand and the 3-fingered fork flew up and blocked another sword gleam. He pointed at his feet and said, "I have been waiting for you for a long time. Fellow Taoist, come and take a look. Do you like this place to be your burial ground?" Zhang Yan smiled and did not argue with him. He looked behind Rong Juanzhong and saw that it was close to the valley. He understood Rong Juanzhong's intention. He raised his eyebrows. If he let Rong Juanzhong go this time, he did not know how long it would take him down. It would be a long battle. Although he was not afraid of it, he could not let Rong Juanzhong do whatever he wanted since he knew about it. After thinking for a while, he came up with a countermeasure. He raised his hand and flicked his finger. A deep purple lightning shot out from 200 to 300 feet away and hit the precious tree of auspicious light. It was like a hammer hitting the golden shield. In an instant, there were countless sparks and light that exploded. Rong Juanzhong's body could not help but tremble when he took the hit. Zhang Yan was not going to let him go and sent dozens of lightning bolts at him. Under this series of lightning strikes, Rong Juanzhong seemed to be affected and could not stand steadily. The precious tree of auspicious light was also faintly collapsing. He was shocked and knew that he could not just stand and watch. He pointed to the sky and raised the 3-fingered fork high up in the sky. He stabbed it towards Zhang Yan from afar. Zhang Yan looked up and met his gaze. A clear light flew out from his mid-brows and attached to the 3-fingered fork. Rong Juanzhong saw that although the clear light was not eye-catching, he was very sensitive and noticed that something was wrong. He controlled the 3-fingered fork and dodged to the side. As expected, the clear light turned and approached him again. He sneered and kept the 3-fingered fork back. After a few breaths, both of them were within 1,000 feet. Rong Juanzhong saw this and shouted. He grabbed with his 5 fingers and used the 1,000 kilograms divine power to stop the clear light in midair. At the same time, he took the spiritual vigor and used the heaven and earth lock technique to suppress Zhang Yan. He then used his mind and the 3-fingered fork vibrated in the air. It turned into a smoke arrow and pierced through the clouds. Even so, he did not stop. He flicked his left sleeve and activated the 3 sounds, 3 skies thunder to the front. After doing all of this, he didn't even look at the results. He immediately retreated. He did not intend to fight Zhang Yan head-on in the first place. It would be best if Zhang Yan was injured after this round of attacks. If nothing happened, as long as he entered the mountains, he would be able to make a comeback next time. When Zhang Yan heard the thunder tide rolling in, whistling and rumbling, his expression turned solemn. Circulating his Xian Qi, his body abruptly grew taller, becoming about 300 feet tall. He suddenly rushed forward. Without dodging or evading, his giant hands swept horizontally, slapping away the incoming thundercloud arrowhead. No matter how many lightning strikes you have, I will defeat them with my own strength. Rong Juanzhong did not expect Zhang Yan to have such a change. He was shocked and sped up his escape technique. Seeing that Rong Juanzhong wanted to escape, Zhang Yan's eyes lit up. He gathered his qi in his chest and roared. Rong Juanzhong felt dizzy and staggered. Just as Zhang Yan was about to move forward, the wind and clouds on his left suddenly stirred and a beam of spiritual light flew over. Turning his head, he saw a giant deer that was similar in size to him. The deer's muscles were bulging and its hooves were stepping on the clouds as it charged towards him like a bolt of lightning. In an instant, it was right in front of him. He snorted and reached out with one hand to grab the antler of the deer. He twisted it and pulled it to the ground. He then reached out and grabbed a ball of black gas. He used his Xian Qi to transform it into a giant axe. He raised his hand and chopped the giant deer to death. After that, he took a step forward and raised the axe with both hands before fiercely chopping down on the mountain ridge. Kacha! The mountain instantly shook and rocks flew everywhere. This mountain peak was forcefully split apart by him. He took another step forward and made a grabbing motion with his left hand, which condensed into a giant hammer. With a whistling sound, he swung it towards the streak of light that was suspended in the sky. Bang! It was as if glass had shattered in the sky. Dazzling light exploded and covered the sky. Golden light and silver stars sprinkled down. A distorted figure could be seen falling diagonally towards the foot of the mountain. Chapter 702. When Zhang Yan and Rong Juanzhong were fighting, it was shrouded in fog so no one could see what was happening inside. They could only tell that the battle was intense from the sounds of explosions and the light from the magical treasures. Yang Shuyong paced back and forth on the altar anxiously while repeating, "What's going on, what's going on?" Chunyuji said, "Zhenren Rong has a plan." This time, he went into battle after careful consideration. That priest Zhang's cultivation is still a level lower. Even if his supernatural powers are sharp, he might not be Zhenren Rong's match. Sect Master, please don't worry. Yang Shuyong heard this and felt slightly relieved. He said, Protector Chunyu is right. Our Xian Yu cult has been working hard for 100 years, how could we? He hadn't finished speaking when he suddenly heard a loud noise as if the earth was splitting and the mountains were collapsing. The altar shook and his feet trembled. His heart couldn't help but tighten. He turned his head to look, but because of the thick fog he still couldn't see anything. After a while, he saw a white sword light flying out from the fog, heading towards the direction of the bell platform. Yang Shuyong's expression changed and he cried out, "Did he win? Could it be that Zhenren Rong?" As the sect master, he lost his composure first. The disciples also felt like the sky was falling and panicked. Chunyuji felt something was wrong and shouted, "What are you doing? The situation isn't clear, don't panic." He then turned around and cupped his hands at Yang Shuyong. "Sect master, Zhenren Rong's real body is behind the mountain. I will go and take a look." Yang Shuyong said, "Go and come back quickly." Xing Fuliu saw the sword gleam fly away and was filled with regret. He cursed, "If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have come here." During the battle just now, he was cautious and hid in the back, avoiding the calamity. He was one of the few cultivators from outside the sect who managed to survive. Now that he thought about it, he felt that he couldn't stay here any longer. He looked around and went to a female cultivator. He whispered, "Chen Yangzi, why don't we leave earlier?" Chen Yangzi was stunned and said, "Zhenren Rong, we signed the spell contract and the assembly isn't over. How can we leave?" Xing Fuliu stomped his foot and said, "Fellow Taoist is muddle-headed. Could it be that he did not see that sword light? Taoist Master Zhang must have one. If Xian Yu loses this time, he will be eaten by that Zhong Tai sooner or later. How can he still care about us? Furthermore, we previously switched to Xian Yu. Zhong Tai might bear a grudge against me. If I don't leave now, I'm afraid I won't be able to leave in the future." Lady Che was a person without any ideas, so when she heard what he said, she became afraid. She nodded and said, Taoist Xing is right. We should leave as soon as possible. The two of them discussed in private for a while. Taking advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention to them at the moment, they quietly descended the mountain. Then, they rode on the conveyance light and flew out of the mountain. After they left Sleeping Star Mountain, the two of them heaved a sigh of relief. They were just about to go their separate ways when they felt their bodies sink, and they were pressed down to the point of being unable to move. Then, a figure flashed in front of them. It was a middle-aged cultivator with an elegant appearance and a mustache. He looked at the two of them and said in a deep voice, "I'm here to ask you too, what's the situation in the mountain right now?" Chunyuji's conveyance light went to the back of the mountain and came to the front of a cave. He waved away the child at the door and walked in. In less than 10 steps, he saw a person sitting on a praying mat. The person's face was pale, and his eyes were closed tightly. His heart skipped a beat and he asked, "Taoist Master Rong?" Rong Juanzhong tried his best to lift his eyelids and said in a weak voice, "Protector Chunyu, that Taoist Zhang's methods are not something we can fight against. I have lost this battle." Chunyu Ji stood for a while before saying, "Taoist Master, victory and defeat are common. Take care and rest. Our sect still needs Taoist Master." Rong Juanzhong shook his head and said, "My Yuanying Dharma body was destroyed by this person, and my Tao foundation has been destroyed. I have no hope of achieving Tao in this world. Later, I will use the talisman to find a place to reincarnate." Chunyuji was shocked and said anxiously, "If Taoist Master leaves, I, Shen Yu, will lose an arm that can hold up the heavens. Taoist Master, please reconsider." Rong Juanzhong sighed and said, "My vitality is exhausted. Even if I don't leave, I won't live for more than a few days. However, before I leave, I have a few words to tell you. Maybe it can save me, Shen Yu, from losing." Chunyuji's heart was heavy. He bent down and pretended to listen attentively. He said, "Taoist Master, please speak." Rong Juanzhong's lips moved, and he whispered a few words to him. Chunyuji listened and nodded his head. Finally, he waved his hand and said, "Protector Chunyu, go. If you can return to the sect and see Taoist Master He, tell him that I tried my best. However, this is the will of the heavens, and there is nothing I can do." After Chunyuji left, he came out of the cave. He had only taken a few steps when he suddenly heard thunder behind him. A white smoke flew out from the cave and disappeared in a flash. When he looked back, Rong Juanzhong, who was sitting in the depths of the cave, was no longer breathing. His body and Tao had disappeared. He didn't have time to be sad and hurried back to the mountain top. He ordered the surrounding disciples to leave and ran to Yang Shuyong's side. He bowed and said, "Sect leader, just now Taoist Master Rong has suffered a great defeat in the battle. Taoist Master feels that he doesn't have much time left, so he activated the talisman that Taoist Master he gave him and went to reincarnate." Yang Shuyong originally had some hope, but after hearing this, it was as if he was struck by lightning. He was stunned on the spot and his mind was blank. The previous sect leader was his uncle, and it was not his turn to sit in the position of sect leader. It was all because of Rong Juanzhong's support that he was able to sit firmly. He had only inherited this position for a few decades, and everything had been smooth sailing. Now that there was such a big change, he was in a mess. Chunyuji followed Rong Juanzhong's instructions and said, "Sect leader, according to the rules of the battle, if we lose, we have to give up all of our celestial cities and manors. If at that time, the two sects really merge into one, my Shen Yu will no longer exist." He said it twice before Yang Shuyong came back to his senses. He was at a loss and said, Then what should we do?" Chunyuji said, "Just now, I have consulted Taoist Master Rong. He said that there are 3 things that must be done. First, I hope that sect leader can expel all of us from the sect. From then on, we will no longer be Shen Yu's disciples. Zhong Tai will not be able to take all of the celestial cities. This way, our sect will be able to preserve its vitality. When the next sect leader raises his arm, we might be able to make a comeback." Even though Yang Shuyong felt that these words were reasonable, he still felt that something was wrong. He frowned and said, "How can Zhong Tai let this go?" Chunyuji said, Sect leader, even though we have lost this battle, our sect's strength has not been damaged. With the 3 sects of the south eyeing us, what can Zhong Tai do even if he is not satisfied? Yang Xiong said, I am worried about that Taoist Zhang. Chunyu Ji bowed and said, that Taoist Zhang is not under Zhong Tai. Taoist Master Rong, from his words and actions, he does not have the intention to fight to the death. If it really doesn't work, our celestial city can give him annual tributes from Shunwu Mountain. He will not refuse. Yang Shuyong hesitated and could not make up his mind. Chunyu Ji stomped his feet and urged him, Sect leader, this matter cannot be delayed. If we are one step late and Zhong Tai comes, it will be too late. Yang Shuyong still did not want to make a decision. He only asked, then what is the second matter? Chunyu Ji said, my Xianyu has been established for thousands of years. There are many cultivation items in the sect. We cannot let Zhong Tai have it so easily. Sect leader can send an order to Taoist Master He. Zhong Tai will not dare to go and ask for it. We can make other arrangements after the matter is over. Yang Shuyong nodded and said, let's talk about the third matter. Chunyu Ji said, the 3 Mountains Qi suppressing tablet is the treasure of my sect. It was bestowed by the patriarch. Even if we lose to Xianyu, as long as this item does not fall into Zhong Tai's hands, it will not be justifiable for him to occupy my land in the future. Sect leader, please think of a way to take it back. The 3 Mountains Qi suppressing tablet only had one secret incantation. Only the past sect leaders could take it. Without Yang Shuyong's permission, no one could move it. Chunyu Ji saw Yang Shuyong standing there with his brows knotted and not reacting for a while. He became anxious and loudly urged, Sect leader, please make a decision quickly. Yang Shuyong's body shook and he seemed to come back to his senses. He sighed and said, that's fine. As the sect leader, I cannot escape from this matter. Why should I implicate you all? I just hope that you will not forget what I said today. Finishing, he added, my son is still young. Chunyu Ji knew what he meant. He bowed and said, little Mistress Yang is intelligent and talented. I will take good care of her. Yang Shuyong seemed to have seen through everything. His gaze became more steady. He said, Emissary Chunyu, please summon the protectors and the master of the city. On the other side, the people on the clock platform were also waiting anxiously. When they saw a ray of sword light piercing through the clouds and rushing towards them, Elder Bai's spirits rose. He slapped the railing and said, it's here. The sword light came above and spun in the air before settling down. Zhang Yan appeared from the light. He then shook his sleeve and the sword pellet turned into a strand of light that entered the heart of his brows. Sect leader Qiao walked out from the crowd and asked with slight anticipation, Zhenren Zhang? Wonder. Zhang Yan smiled and said, Rong Juanzhong has been defeated. As soon as these words were spoken, waves of exclamations sounded out from both sides. Even though they knew that the outcome would be like this, it still caused them to be extremely excited. Not long after, the younger generation disciples behind them heard of this matter as well, and waves of cheers instantly sounded out. Sect leader Qiao's emotions were like a tide. He said, this battle is all thanks to Zhenren's efforts. Please accept a bow from me, Qiao Huanzhuan. When he finished, he bowed heavily. Zhang Yan raised his hand to return the bow and said, I signed the contract on the clock platform, so it's natural for me to put in effort. Sect leader Qiao is exaggerating. Sect leader Qiao straightened his body and cupped his hands again. I'll still need Zhenren's help for the follow-up matters. Zhang Yan smiled and said, Sect leader Qiao is wrong. Even if there's no I, your sect will still be able to suppress Xianyu. Since Rong Juanzhong was defeated, there was no more suspense about what would happen next. There was still Du Shixuan on the clock platform. This person's strength path Xiangong only needed to consume some spirit medicine and recuperate for a day and a half, and he would recover. How would Xianyu be able to find someone to contend against him now? Sect leader Qiao was stunned, but he immediately understood the reason. He bowed and said with a smile, Zhenren, please take a seat. Zhang Yan gladly went to the seat and sat down. Everyone followed suit. At this moment, in the valley in front of them, the mist had gradually dissipated. Everyone looked over and saw that where the two of them had fought just now, the mountain had collapsed, the rocks had shattered, and the ground was covered with broken branches and leaves. It was truly a shocking sight. Sect leader Qiao was also afraid. He pondered for a while, then suddenly raised his head and said, "When Zhenren defeated old man Jin Ling, you said that there was something that was not convenient to mention. I wonder if you can tell me now?" P.S. Chapter 703. Zhang Yan could tell that sect leader Qiao was taking the initiative to bring up the past to show his goodwill. He smiled and said, "When I settled down on Mount Shenwu, I searched everywhere for elixirs. When King Ying found out, he gave me a lot of them. I heard that he is now in prison, so I wanted to ask sect leader Qiao for a favor and release him." Sect leader Qiao was startled and asked with a strange expression, "About King Ying?" Madame Zhao's beautiful eyes suddenly turned and she glared at him. Sect leader Qiao's face showed some awkwardness. He coughed and said, "I can make the decision. When I return to the sect, I will give Zhenren an explanation." The royal family of Chu was the Xiang family. They were the descendants of the founding ancestor Jinzhong. However, the current Chu emperor was a female emperor. After the death of the late Chu emperor, she usurped the throne as the Empress Dowager. In order to consolidate her power, she went to sect leader Qiao to recommend herself. She was intelligent and had a unique fragrance. She was also a stunning beauty, so she was quite favored. But at the same time, sect leader Qiao's favored concubines were jealous. Since they could not do anything to her openly, they secretly tried to provoke the princes to overthrow and execute them. But who would have thought that after the matter was leaked, sect leader Qiao would use the excuse that the people of the sect were not allowed to influence the situation of the Chu kingdom as an excuse to punish a few of his concubines. The sixth prince was also implicated because of this matter and was imprisoned. Zhang Yan was not interested in the inside story. Seeing that sect leader Qiao agreed, he cupped his hands and said, "Then I thank you in advance." Sect leader Qiao hurriedly said, "It's nothing. It's just a small matter. How can it be worthy of Zhenren's thanks?" At this time, a disciple boarded the carriage and whispered in Elder Bai's ear. Elder Bai's face lit up and he turned to sect leader Qiao and said, "Senior brother sect leader, just now a disciple came to report that he saw two rays of light from the Xianyue sect's altar leaving the mountain. They seem to be cultivators from outside the sect who were recruited earlier. This shows that after Rong Juanzhong's defeat, the Xianyue sect is already in a state of panic. They can no longer control the situation. I am willing to try to persuade them to surrender so that there will be no more unnecessary killing." Sect leader Qiao was slightly surprised, but after thinking about it, he felt that it was reasonable. After a moment of silence, he said, "Junior brother going alone is a bit inappropriate. Junior brother Lin, you go with junior brother Bai. Remember to be careful." Elder Lin, who was at the side, stood up and acknowledged the order. The two of them came out of the banquet, bowed to him, and used their escape technique to fly to the other side. At this time, Elder Yen stroked his beard and said, "Sect master, even if Xian Yu admits defeat, he won't give in easily. He will definitely use some tricks." Sect leader Qiao nodded and said, "Let's wait for the two junior brothers to return first." After about 4 hours, Elder Lin and Elder Bai came back. When their figures landed, Elder Bai quickly walked to the front of the carriage. His expression was slightly excited as he bowed and said, "Congratulations, sect master. Xian Yu cult is willing to surrender to my Zhong Tai." When sect leader Qiao heard this, he was slightly dazed. Then he suddenly stood up from his seat. After a few breaths, he slowly sat down again. At this moment, his heart was in turmoil. The two sects were one. For thousands of years, what the previous sect masters wanted to do but couldn't was done by him. He tried to make his voice calm as he gripped the armrest tightly. He leaned forward and asked, "What conditions does Xian Yu have?" Elder Bai gritted his teeth and said, "Yang Shuyong didn't say much, but he is also cunning. He actually expelled the 8 protectors and elder envoys from the cult." Sect leader Qiao was stunned. His thoughts turned and he realized Xian Yu's intention. He clearly wanted to find an excuse to preserve their vitality and at the same time, not let Zhong Tai occupy more celestial cities. However, to everyone's surprise, he wasn't angry. Instead, he said, "That's good. Sage He is still here, so we don't have to force Xianyu too much." Xianyu cult had a total of 6 Yuanying second-tier cultivators. Other than the Golden Spirit Elder who was killed by Zhang Yan, there were still 5. With Zhong Tai's current strength, even if he swallowed them all, it would definitely cause internal instability. Instead of that, it was better to let them go. As for the celestial cities, they couldn't occupy them with their current manpower. They could only think of a way to take them back later. Elder Bai, however, showed a worried expression and said, "Sect leader, I'm afraid that after they occupy the celestial cities, they will collude with the 3 sects of the south." Sect leader Qiao smiled and said, "Junior brother, the cultivation of external objects and celestial cities are secondary. The most important thing is those Taoist books and records. As long as I, Zhong Tai, have 200 to 300 years, I will be able to make up for all the inadequacies in cultivation methods and divine arts. At that time, why would I be afraid of others?" Elder Yen also said, "That's right. If we only focus on those external objects, we will be neglecting the essentials. The key to cultivation methods is the foundation of our foothold in Dongxing." There was one more thing that they didn't say. If Zhong Tai won, the sect would obtain fate. Relying on the sect's treasure, the 5 symbols white incense tripod, they could prolong Sage Zheng's life. With this heavenly abode sage guarding the sect, they wouldn't be afraid of the 3 sects of the south. At that moment, Zhang Yan spoke. His gaze turned and he smiled. "Sect leader Qiao, since Xianyu admitted defeat in this battle, I should take my leave." Sect leader Qiao was shocked. "Sage is leaving?" Zhang Yan said, "I have been out for a long time. As the leader of Hanyuan, there are still many matters in the sect that need to be dealt with." Sect leader Qiao thought for a moment, then took out a jade token from his waist and said, "Since Master Zhang has already decided to leave, then I won't hold you back any longer. This is the token of my sect leader. You can take whatever you want from the storehouse." After handing it over and waiting for Zhang Yan to receive it, he left his seat and stood up. He cupped his hands and said, "When this matter is over, I will set up a banquet at the Golden Bell platform. I hope that Zhenren will do me the honor." Zhang Yan smiled and nodded. He returned the courtesy and said, "I will definitely come." According to the rules of the battle, other than the many spiritual objects, Zhong Tai still had to give him a few celestial cities. However, Xianyu had just arrived and there were many things to deal with. Now was not the time to discuss it. He believed that Zhong Tai wouldn't neglect this matter. After he kept the jade tablet, he leaped into the sky and flew away on a cloud under everyone's respectful gaze. After he left, Madame Zhao suddenly felt a vibration in her pouch. A pearl flew out and turned into a white light that flew into the sky. Sect leader Qiao's gaze froze. He said, "Madam, is it the person from the sea?" Madame Zhao said, "Yes. But now that he has left, there's nothing left to do." Sect leader Qiao was silent for a while. He slowly shook his head and said, "I've been waiting for the map of the North Sea for a long time. This matter won't end so easily." Elder Yen said in a deep voice, "It is indeed a precaution." Elder Bai said, "Just now, I'm at Xianyu's place. I heard Chunyu Ji talk about Sage Zhang. It seems that this person's background isn't normal. That year, Sage Shen Baishuang killed a protector of Xianyu. Sage He didn't allow the disciples to seek revenge. This is very thought-provoking." Elder Yan's eyes suddenly lit up. He said in a serious tone, "Sect leader, we must rope this person in at all costs." Sect leader Qiao's expression also became serious. He said to Madame Zhao, "Madam, immediately return to the mountain and gather all the spiritual medicine that Sage Zhang needs. At the same time, send people to the 3 southern sects to search. The more the better. You can use talismans and pills to exchange. It doesn't matter if you suffer some losses." Madame Zhao said in surprise, "Husband, why are you in such a hurry?" Elder Yen said meaningfully, "Madam, if I, Zhong Tai, can rope this person in with spiritual medicine, others might be able to as well." Madame Zhao was enlightened. She immediately stood up and said seriously, I will return to the mountain now. I don't want to delay husband's matter. Outside Sleeping Star Mountain, Xing Fuliu saw that his body was pressed down to the point that he couldn't move. This situation was definitely because he had fallen into the heaven and earth confinement technique. He secretly looked at the appearance of the person in front of him. He felt that he looked familiar. After thinking for a while, he put on a smile and probed, Are you Hui Xian Elder's disciple, Sage Chu? I am Xing Fuliu. During the Fengxiang sword worship ceremony, I also drank tea and discussed Tao with your sex Taoist Wang Guangyu. Chu Changji said lightly, Don't try to get acquainted. Let me ask you too, what happened in the mountain? Tell me quickly. Xing Fuliu pondered in private. This was not a secret. When the assembly was over, the world would know about it. Thus, there was no need for him to hide anything. He told Chu Changji everything that happened in the mountain just now. After listening to him, Chu Changji was stunned for a while. He said in disbelief, You said that Rong Juanzhong was defeated by that Taoist Zhang? Xing Fuliu nodded repeatedly and said, That's right, that's right. Taoist Chu didn't see it, but that Taoist Zhang's Taoist techniques and mystical skills are tyrannical and peerless. In just a short time, he killed over 20 fellow nascent soul Taoists and forced the rest to hide in the forbidden formation, not daring to come out. This lowly Taoist believes that Zhong Tai is the winner this time. Chu Changji still didn't believe it. Zhang Yan's battle achievements were too shocking. He pointed at Chen Yangzi and said, You, tell me, is he telling the truth? Chen Yangzi said timidly, Priest Xing is not exaggerating. If Priest Xing and I didn't hide in time, we would have ended up the same way. Chu Changji's gaze stopped on the two of them. He stared back and forth as if trying to discern the truth. At this moment he heard a voice beside his ear. Disciple doesn't need to ask anymore. Let them leave. In a cave not far away, Luo Dongchuan heard their conversation clearly. He pounded his chest and stamped his feet. It's this Zhang Yan who ruined our Python tribe's plans again. Hui Xian Elder frowned. If this matter was not settled, the Python tribe might not fulfill their promise. He said, There's always a way out. Taoist Luo, just think of another countermeasure. Luo Dongchuan looked over and grabbed Hui Xian's arm. He said anxiously, Taoist Hui Xian, do you have a good plan to teach me? Hui Xian Grand Master said in a deep voice, The 3 southern sects are plotting against the north of Dongsheng. I have quite a number of acquaintances in the 3 southern sects and can try to do something about it. When Luo Dongchuan heard this, he let go in disappointment. How can the 3 southern factions be used so easily? Hui Xian Elder said, Of course not. Rumor has it that under the Dragon Pillar, there's a Taoist book written by Taoist Master Demi. Since Xian Yu was defeated, it should belong to Zhong Tai. If we can really obtain it, maybe Zhong Tai can produce another Paradise Master. Before the situation was settled, the 3 southern factions sat on the mountain and watched the tigers fight. They were not willing to get involved in this mess. Now I feel that they will not allow Zhong Tai to grow. Luo Dongchuan said in surprise, There's really a Taoist book written by Taoist Master Demi under the Dragon Pillar? It was a book written by an ascended Jinren. He couldn't help but be tempted. Hui Xian Elder glanced at him and said, So what if there is? So what if there isn't? It's enough to provoke the 3 southern factions. However, your tribe needs to find a way to move that Taoist Zhang away. With this person obstructing us, it will be difficult to succeed. Luo Dongchuan chuckled but did not reply. Even though he deeply hated Zhang Yan for ruining the Python clan's plan this time, he didn't lose his head and look for trouble with Zhang Yan. Now, he could only wait for his clansmen to invite the person that could restrain Zhang Yan. Chapter 704. After Zhang Yan left Sleeping Star Mountain, he first sent a letter to Zhang Boyan to inform him of the details. Then, he found a hilltop and used the earth escape technique to enter the belly of the mountain. He opened up a cave and meditated for a while. The mana he used in the fight was fully recovered. Then, he came out of the cave in high spirits and flew towards Hope Voice Mountain at lightning speed. Unlike when he came here, he traveled very fast with his sword. After only one day, he returned to the capital of Chu, Daong, and landed in the inn. The result of the fight in Sleeping Star Mountain had not been announced yet. The servant of the inn saw that he went to Sleeping Star Mountain with other cultivators, but now he came back alone. He couldn't help but feel strange, but because of his low status, he didn't dare to ask. Zhang Yan arrived at the hall. Just now, he sat down. Suddenly, he heard footsteps. He looked up and saw Zhao Yang walking into the hall. When the latter saw him, he was surprised and bowed. "Master is back." Disciple greets master. Zhang Yan helped him up and asked with a smile, "When I went to the dragon pillar with your master, I heard him say that you have to practice a spirit-dispelling technique within a month. If you fail, you will be punished by being in isolation for 30 years. Have you mastered it?" Zhao Yang sighed. "This technique is really difficult to practice. I spent 40 days and just now mastered it. I just came out of isolation the day before yesterday. I think I will be punished by my master when I go back." Zhang Yan looked at his dejected look and couldn't help but laugh. He changed his mind and said, "You came at the right time. Is the manager of the Inn King's residence, Xiang Zhanfu, still in the inn?" Zhao Yang replied, "This person is still obediently staying here. These few days, he hasn't gone anywhere else." Zhang Yan nodded and said, "Good, go and inform him. As for the matter of the Inn King, I have already asked sect leader Qiao for mercy. He will be released in a few days. Tell him to wait patiently." Zhao Yang vaguely knew that this person seemed to be involved with a rare treasure. He bowed respectfully and said, "Yes, disciple will go now." After he left, Zhang Yan then instructed the maidservant, "Go find the manager of this place." After about the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, a middle-aged cultivator wearing a square scarf stepped into the hall. He bowed and asked, "Did Taoist priest call me?" Zhang Yan asked, "I have something to ask you. Who is in charge of the mountain now?" The steward answered honestly, "The sect leader and several elders are not in the mountain, so the madams are in charge of the mundane affairs." Zhang Yan asked again, "I have the sect leader's communication talisman with me, so I need to go to the storehouse to get some spiritual objects. Where should I go? Who should I look for?" The steward thought for a moment and said, "If you're looking for scriptures, you should go to the Silver Nose Palace. If one wanted to find rare treasures, they would have to go to the Oxhorn Hall." These two places were next to each other. They were all on Hope Sound Mountain's Rhinoceros Peak. The guard is the second disciple of the sect leader, Taoist Quan Kong. After Zhang Yan asked about it, he nodded his head and dismissed the steward. Then he rode the wind and clouds and headed towards Rhinoceros Peak. Not long after, he arrived in front of the main hall at the bottom of the peak. A Taoist steward came forward and bowed. "Taoist priest, please excuse me. Our sect's sect leader has yet to return from the Dragon Pillar battle, so the hall is not accepting guests these days. Please forgive me." Zhang Yan said, "I came here on the promise of your sect's sect leader. I'm here to get some spiritual herbs." The Taoist steward asked suspiciously, "Do you have proof?" Zhang Yan took out a jade tablet and showed it to him. He said, "This talisman was personally given by your sect leader." The Taoist steward stretched out his hand and wanted to take a closer look, but after hearing this, his body shook and he quickly retracted his hand. He widened his eyes and looked at it for a while. He smiled bitterly and said, "This talisman looks real, but this is a serious matter. I'm a lowly Taoist, so I can't make the decision. I need to ask the hall leader to check it. Please forgive me." Zhang Yan nodded his head and smiled. "You can go ahead, I will wait here." The Taoist steward called for 2 Taoist children and ordered them to take care of Zhang Yan. He then hurriedly ran into the inner hall. In less than the time it takes for an incense to burn, he returned with a silver-haired Daoran. Doran's expression was solemn. He walked up slowly and carefully looked at Zhang Yan. He then bowed and said, "I Quan Tsong, is this Zhenren holding my Zhong Tai communication talisman?" When Zhang Yan heard that he was Quan Tsong, he passed the jade tablet over and said, "Hall leader Quan Tsong, please take a look." When Quan Tsong Daoran saw the talisman, he knew that it was the sect leader's personal item. But after he looked at it, he said calmly, "My eyes are not good, so I can't tell if it's real or fake. I need to check it carefully, please don't be offended. Zhang Yan knew that this matter involved the sect's treasury, so it was reasonable for Daoren to be more cautious. He smiled and said, Taoist Quan Song, you're too serious. This is reasonable. Quan Song Daoren took out a golden mirror and looked at the talisman. He then excused himself and went to the back of the hall. He said to a disciple, Go and tell Lady Lian that someone has the sect leader's personal talisman and wants to take something from the treasury. Ask her how to deal with it. When Zhong Tai's sect went to Sleeping Star to fight, all the Yuanying cultivators in the sect went out. Only the second-generation disciples were left to guard the mountain gate. But with Zhenren Zheng overseeing this place, no one dared to cause trouble. The sect was filled with common things. Sect leader Qiao was worried about outsiders, so he let a few concubines take care of it. Among the concubines, Lian Murong's cultivation was the highest. A few days ago, she heard that she broke through the Yuanying realm. Quan Song knew that she was narrow-minded and wanted to please her, so he sent a disciple to ask her. Hope Voice Mountain, Warm Furnace Pavilion. Melodious sounds of the zither came from inside. The sound was pleasing to the ear, overlapping like jade waves piling up snow, soothing the heart. When the song ended, Elder Yu clapped his hands and said, Lady Lian has entered the Yuanying realm this time. I didn't think that Lady Lian's zither skills would also improve greatly. Lian Nyangzi was extremely happy to hear his praise. She waved her hand and said with a light smile, That's all thanks to Elder Yu for sending over that ship full of good gang heroes. Elder Yu, I will remember your good deeds. Elder Yu looked at her, but he deliberately sighed and said, It's a pity, a pity. Lady Lian asked curiously, What's a pity? Yu Daoren said, It's a pity for me. If Lady Lian had become a Yuanying earlier, she could also be like Madame Zhao, going to the Dragon Pillar to fight and share sect leader Qiao's worries. At the mention of Madame Zhao, Lady Lian snorted softly and said, Zhao Ru is not a citizen of Chu, but because she gave birth to a good son, Master took a fancy to her. But now that I've also achieved Yuanying, I'm not inferior to her. As the two were talking, a maidservant entered the hall and reported, Lady, Taoist Quan Song sent a disciple over, saying that he has something important to discuss with you. Quan Song was sect leader Qiao's second disciple, but this person's aptitude was not good. He had cultivated for hundreds of years, but he was only at the first level of core transformation. However, he was from a large clan of Chu and was related to her clan by marriage, so Lady Lian didn't want to offend him. She said, Send that person in. After a while, a disciple entered the hall. After greeting, he didn't wait for any questions and immediately stated the purpose of his visit. Lady Lian said in surprise, Master's personal talisman? Your master must not be mistaken. The disciple said, Master has already checked the talisman, it's real. Lady Lian asked doubtfully, Since he came to take something from the storehouse, why didn't he send a disciple from our sect? What's the background of that person? Did you find out? Quan Song replied, When I came, I already found out that this person's surname is Zhang, and he's the Hanyuan sect leader of West Shenwu Tsangzhu Peak. He was recruited by Immortal Du for this Dragon Pillar meeting. You're saying that this person is Taoist Zhang of Shenwu Mountain. Lady Lian was surprised at first, then a trace of coldness appeared in her beautiful eyes. She snorted and thought to herself, that Taoist Zhang dared to humiliate me back then, and now that he's in my hands, I might as well find a reason to deal with him and vent my anger. However, that talisman was sect leader Qiao's personal talisman, so she couldn't stop him. No matter how she thought about it, she couldn't think of a way, so she looked down and asked, Elder Yu, what do you think we should do about this? Elder Yu knew what she was thinking, but he said, I'm just an outsider, how can I discuss the matters of your sect? Lady Lian said unhappily, I told you to say it, so just say it. Elder Yu said meaningfully, now that it's the time for the Dragon Pillar meeting, it's an unusual time. Lady Lian needs to investigate for a few more days, in case there's a mistake in the future and it'll be hard to explain to the sect. Lady Lian's beautiful eyes brightened, and she instructed the disciple, go back and tell Quan Song, whatever that Taoist Zhang asks for, just say that you can't find it, push it back today, Push it back tomorrow, push it back tomorrow. In short, don't ask him to find it, do you understand? The disciple agreed and left the pavilion. At this moment, Lady Lian's heart was perturbed. The person who held the sect leader's talisman was like the sect leader himself, and secretly tampering with things would be a heavy crime. But she thought again, she was now a Yuanian cultivator, and sect leader Qiao couldn't wait to protect her, so why would he fuss over such a small matter? Even if he asked about it later, she just had to insist that she didn't know about it. It didn't take long for the disciple to return to Rhinoceros Peak, and he told Quan Tsong everything Lady Lian had said without missing a word. This Daoren immediately understood. He strolled out of the hall and walked up to Zhang Yan, bowing respectfully. Taoist Zhang, the talisman has been verified, and it's indeed the sect leader's talisman. I've been negligent before, and I hope you can forgive me. What item does Taoist Zhang want this time? Zhang Yan smiled and took out the list of gifts he had brought with him. Quan Tsong took the list and glanced at it. His brows furrowed deeply, and he sighed endlessly. Zhang Yan glanced at him and asked, "What is it? Does Taoist Quan Tsong have any difficulties?" Quan Tsong waved the list and said apologetically, "I'm sorry that Taoist Zhang knows. The storehouse is very large, and these spirit herbs are usually not used by anyone, so I don't know where they are. I can't find them in a short time, so I'm afraid I'll have to ask Taoist Zhang to wait for a few more days." Zhang Yan asked, "How many days do I have to wait?" Quan Tsong shook his head and said, "It's hard to say, hard to say. If it's quick, 1 or 2 days, at most 5 or 6 days. If I can't find them, 10 to 15 days is also possible." Zhang Yan smiled faintly and said, "When I came out, sect leader Qiao said that with this talisman, I can take whatever I want from the storehouse. Since the spirit herbs are hard to find, then there's no need to trouble Taoist Zhang, I'll just take them all." When he finished, he shook the talisman, and in an instant, all the layers of restrictions on the hall were suppressed. Then, he shook his shoulder, and a ray of light rose from his back. In an instant, water surged, and the whole rhinoceros hall was swept into it. Then, he turned into a ray of rainbow and flew into the sky, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Quan Tsong was dumbfounded, looking at the empty hilltop. After a long while, he let out a loud cry and fell to the ground with his face up. P.S. Chapter 705. After Zhang Yan left the Rhinoceros Peak, he returned to the pavilion to pick up Zhao Yang and the stone spirit Xiao Ying. Then he flew towards the north. 8 days later he entered the Shenwu Mountain. After another 2 hours, Songju Peak was already in sight. There were several disciples on duty at the gazebo at the peak. One of them saw a sword flying out from the clouds and heading towards them. His eyes widened and he shouted, "The sect master is back! The sect master is back! Quick, go and sound the bell." Not long after, the sound of the bell could be heard both inside and outside the sect. At this time, Chu Mu Ran, Wen Liang, and Zhao Gu were all in the cave doing their morning rituals. When they heard the news, they were shocked, knowing that Zhang Yan had returned to the mountain. They quickly put down what they were doing and flew up the mountain to greet him. After Zhang Yan entered the mountain, he first sent out a gust of wind to send Zhao Yang and Xiaoying back. Then he went up the mountain. As soon as he stood still on the mountain top, a ray of golden light shone towards him. He turned his head and saw that the old moon was about to recede but had not yet receded. The morning sun was spitting out from the horizon. The first rays of the morning sun shone down on the 10,000 mountains. It looked magnificent and magnificent, imposing and majestic, inspiring people's heart. He stood on the peak with his hands behind his back. When he saw this scene, the words changing with each passing day appeared in his mind. In the battle at Dragon Pillar Mountain, he defeated Xianyu with his divine arts and arcane power. Although he was unparalleled for a while, many of his techniques were seen by others. There was no divine art in the world that could not be broken. It all depended on how one dealt with it. If someone wanted to deal with him, they would definitely find a way to break it. As the saying goes, when the tide rises, the boat rises. He thought that if he relied on the methods in front of him and did not change, he might be able to ensure that he would not lose in the short term. But as time passed, those who were diligent would always find the right way. He also had to deal with it. The best way was to use his own cultivation method as a foundation and derive another method. He pondered for a while and put this matter aside for the time being. He walked into the cave. After 100 steps, he arrived at a stone residence. A 16 or 17-year-old youth was meditating inside. He heard footsteps. When he opened his eyes, he couldn't help but say happily, "Master?" He jumped down from the rock and ran over, kneeling on the ground and kowtowing. "This disciple is Fu Baoxing." "Greetings, Master." Zhang Yan raised his hand. He smiled and said, "Get up, disciple." Fu Baoxing responded and stood up. Zhang Yan took a few glances and saw that his disciple's eyes were clear. It was obvious that the divine light had improved a lot since he left. He subconsciously nodded his head. He must have felt something just now, so he said, "My disciple, you are the youngest among my disciples. You should be at the age where you want to play and be active. However, in the next few hundred years, there will be a great calamity in the world. Everyone will be caught in it. If you want to avoid this calamity, you must not slack off." Fu Baoxing said seriously, "Yes, Master. Your disciple will not dare to disappoint you." At this moment, the child at the door said, "Master, Chu, Wen, and Zhao Daoist are outside asking for an audience." Zhang Yan said, "Understood." He gave Fu Baoxing a few more words of encouragement before walking out. Soon he arrived at the front hall of the cave. Chu Mu and the other two were already there. When they saw him, they quickly came up to greet him. Chu Mu was the first to bow and said, "We are very happy to hear that sect head Shixiang has returned." Zhang Yan nodded and said, "You don't have to be so courteous. Sit down and talk." The three waited for him to sit on the couch before sitting at the side. Wen Liang was an impatient person. As soon as he sat down, he asked, "Sect head Shixiang, which sect won the battle of the Dragon Pillars?" Chu Mu Ran and Zhao Gu both looked over. No matter which sect won the battle of the Dragon Pillars, the situation in Dongxing would change. Although Mount Shenwu was far away in the north, there were many sects and schools on the mountain that were still under the Bell Platform in name, so they would inevitably be affected. Zhang Yan smiled and said, "There is no need for me to tell you. You will know in a few days." He didn't mention this matter, so the three didn't ask any more. They could only talk about the mundane affairs of the sect. However, there was nothing important in the sect during this period of time, so they took their leave after talking for a while. The three rode the clouds down the peak. When Liang was puzzled and asked, "Senior Chu, what does sect head Shixiang mean by this?" He didn't even explain it clearly. Chu Mu thought for a while and said, "I saw Senior Shixiang's expression. He is calm and at ease. This matter should be good and not bad." Zhao Gu was a calm person and said, "Since sect head Shixiang said that we will know the result in a few days, then we don't need to waste our time and guess randomly. Let's just wait patiently." 20 days later, a gold-plated flying carriage with eagle wings came to Mount Shenwu. Because it was blocked by the restrictive formation outside the mountain, it could only land outside the mountain. A deep and magnetic voice came from the carriage. "Manager Fu, have we arrived?" Xiang Zhanfu came to the back of the carriage and said through the curtains, "Your Highness Ing Wang has arrived at the Shenwu Mountain, but we don't know when this place was set up with a restrictive spell. It is difficult for the flying carriage to pass through. I have already asked Celestial Master Hu to find out the reason." "We have arrived at Mount Shenwu?" The curtain was lifted and a man in a long robe came out. He had bright eyes and a feathered crown on his head. His beard was carefully trimmed. Looking at the majestic mountain in front of him, he had a look of admiration in his eyes. He said, "Beautiful like the clouds, majestic like the sky, worthy of the name of Mount Shenwu." At this time, a beautiful woman wearing a fox fur coat came out of the carriage and put a cloak on him. She said, "Your Highness, the wind is strong outside. Don't catch a cold." Footsteps were heard and a Taoist walked over. Xiang Zhanfu went up and asked, "Taoist Master Hu, how is it?" Taoist Master Hu ignored him and bowed to the Ing King. He said, Your Highness, the restrictive formation in front of us was set up by the order of Zhenrenzhang from the peak of Mount Shenwu. After I reported my intention, the formation has been removed and we can continue on our way. The Ing King looked at the mountain in the distance and shook his head. He said, "Thanks to Zhenrenzhang's help, I was able to escape from being roped in. Since I have come to express my gratitude, I will go on foot now to show my sincerity." The woman exclaimed, "Your Highness!" The Taoist was stunned. Although they were already in front of the Divine House Mountain, they were still thousands of miles away from Zhangzhou Peak. Moreover, they were surrounded by lofty mountains and natural moats. There were some places where there were no roads at all. Although this prince also took pills to refine his qi, he could not compare to a cultivator. If they traveled by land, who knew how long it would take to reach their destination? Xiang Zhanfu advised in a low voice, "Your Highness is here not only to pay your respects to the mountain but also because of Madame Zhao's request. It is not your Highness's matter alone. We cannot delay it." The Ing King was reminded by him and hesitated for a while. He finally gave up on the idea and said, "Manager Fu is right. We cannot delay the proper business." Xiang Zhanfu heaved a sigh of relief. He said, "Please return to the carriage, Your Highness." The Ing King nodded silently. He took the woman's hand and sat back in the carriage. He put down the curtain. Taoist master who took out a talisman and shook it in his hand. The flying carriage took off from the ground and flew towards Mount Shenwu. Hongyu Mountain, Broad Wing Peak, Soaring Sky Hall. The head of Fengxiang Sword School, Qin Yuan, sat on the jade crane platform. He was in his 40s and wore a black robe and a black crown. He looked solemn and dignified. At this moment he was reading a letter. His eyes were as cold as ice. None of the 5 elders in the hall dared to make a sound. After some time, he shook the letter in his hand and looked down the platform. He asked, "This priest Zhang is only at the 2nd level of Yuanying, but he was able to defeat Rong Juanzhong and killed more than 20 cultivators from Shenyu. I wonder what kind of person he is? Why haven't I heard of him before?" The great elder, Long Jingqing, who was below the platform, said, "I have asked around. This person is the head of a small sect in West Godly House. He is not a cultivator from Dongsheng. He came from another continent. There are rumors that he is from the same sect as priest Shen Baishuang from hundreds of years ago." Shen Baishuang? Chen Yuan thought for a while and said, "I have heard of this person before." He tilted his head and looked down at an elder with messy hair that almost covered his face. He said, "Elder Su, you seem to have met this person for a while?" The elder's body moved. 2 rays of light shone out from under his messy hair. He said in a deep voice, "Yes, we met once before." A young cultivator opposite him sneered, "Senior brother sect head, you don't know. That Shen Baishuang has no relationship with our sect. We have some conflicts." Qin Yuan was surprised. "Conflicts? Why don't I know?" The young cultivator said, "In the past, priest Shen searched for spiritual objects all over Dongsheng. It was said that he wanted to refine a magic sword. Because of his profound cultivation, he seemed to be an expert in using the sword. At that time, senior brother Su had just obtained the cutting spring sword and wanted to learn from him, who knew that he only won by 1 move. He said that our sect's sword skills are not even comparable to Shaoqing's and Yuan Yang's. This is a great insult to me. What kind of sects are Shaoqing and Yuan Yang? I have never even heard of them. Senior brother Su, you have a good temper. If I knew about this earlier, I would use this extreme light in my hand to learn from him. Let's see if he still dares to talk big." Qin Yuan frowned. How could Shen Baishuang not care about him? Hundreds of years had passed. What was the point of talking about it? The strength that Zhang Yan had revealed in the Battle of the Dragon Pillars was truly terrifying. Even if he couldn't be on good terms with such a person, he couldn't rashly offend him either. If these words were to spread out, it would clearly be summoning a powerful enemy for no reason. Long Jingqing could understand his thoughts. He said, "Junior brother, it's already in the past. Besides, that priest Zhang isn't Shen Baishuang. We can't talk about him." The young cultivator snorted and didn't say anything else. Long Jingqing said to Qin Yuan, "Sect master, with Xian Yu's defeat, Zhongtai can be said to have monopolized the northern lands. They have close to 100 celestial cities. If Xian Yu's disciples also surrender, their power will definitely increase. It's not good for me. Why don't we send someone to send gifts in the name of congratulations? We can also find out the real situation at the same time. Chen Yuan pondered for a while and nodded. That's right. Who should we send? Long Jingqing's gaze shifted and stopped at a girl with a slender neck and a straight waist. Her skin was smooth and her eyebrows were like willow leaves. The woman sat there with a perfectly straight figure. Her gaze was calm, and she exuded an oppressive heroic spirit. Beside her knees was a faintly discernible magic sword that was about 4 feet long. Junior Sister Fan and Junior Sister Zhao are from the same sect. How about Junior Sister Go? P.S. Chapter 706. King Ying and his entourage entered the mountain by flying carriage. 2 days later, they arrived at a large hill. The carriage stopped in front of a tall decorated archway that reached the clouds. As soon as they entered the Shenwu Mountain, the school of Deep Abyss had already received the news. Hence, there was already a disciple on duty waiting at the archway. At this moment, the disciple walked out slowly and bowed. He asked, "Are you King Ying of Chu?" King Ying came out of the carriage, tidied his clothes and said, "Yes, I am. May I know how I should address you?" The disciple smiled, "I am just a disciple guarding the mountain. I am not worthy of the title of Celestial Master." King Ying cupped his hands and said, "I am here under the orders of the sect leader of Zhongtai to pay a visit to Jinren Zhang. Please inform him." The disciple then understood. He took out a talisman and drew it in the air. He then flicked his finger and the talisman flew into the sky. He then said, "King Ying, please wait for a moment. I have already sent a message to the mountain. I will receive a reply soon." King Ying agreed. He turned around and saw a lake at the foot of the hill. The lake was clear and blue, the water level was like a mirror. There was a row of purple bamboos by the side of the lake, swaying with the wind. Close to the edge of the forest, there were quite a number of palaces and pavilions, with warm terraces and high pavilions hidden in the clouds and mist, like a fairyland. Only the highest palace was grand and majestic, with a solemn atmosphere. He pointed and asked, "Taoist, is that the abode of Master Zhang's abode?" The disciple smiled. "King Ying is mistaken. That place is under the jurisdiction of the lower house. Elder Zhao lives there. The sect leader's abode is at the top of Tsangzhu Peak. You have to cross the bridge at the back of the path and walk for about 100 miles before you reach it." King Ying listened and nodded his head. It was the same for the Zhongtai sect. The main peak of Hope Voice Mountain was the place where the sect leader and a few elders cultivated. The rest of the disciples were stationed at the 2 sides of the mountain. They were not allowed to go there without permission. He pointed to the foot and asked, "Does this mountain have a name?" The disciple was stunned and then shook his head. This hill was made by the sect leader using his strength. It has not been given a name. When the king of Ying heard that the mountain below him was actually formed from soil, he couldn't help but jumped in shock. He took 2 steps back and looked at it again and again. A sense of reverence gradually grew in his heart. Although he had not entered the Tao. However, he was surrounded by profound cultivators. He knew that no one in the Zhongtai sect could do such a thing. He thought to himself, "No wonder Madame Zhao repeatedly warned me not to take this opportunity to befriend Zhang Jinren. This immortal master is indeed very powerful." Suddenly, a whistle sounded in the sky. A green figure flew over from afar. The managing disciple stretched out his hand. It turned out to be a straight, slender bamboo arrow with an intricate copper nose at the end. It was only the size of a thumb. He took out a roll of silk and opened it. He looked up and said, "King Ying, the sect leader has ordered for you to enter the mountain." The king of Ying agreed and was about to return to the workshop when the managing disciple stopped him. Just as he was puzzled, he saw the disciple taking out a bell and shaking it in the air. A clear cry of a crane was heard, and a giant crane with bright feathers and a red crown flew over. The disciple went forward to comfort him and said, "King Ying, Please ride on this crane. The king of Ing looked at it and hesitated. Although the crane was majestic, it had no saddle or rope. He was afraid that if he was not careful, he would fall down. The managing disciple could tell what he was worried about and laughed. This crane is intelligent. King Ing can ride on it without worry. The king of Ing braced himself and flipped onto the back of the crane. Before he could sit properly, the white crane spread its wings and suddenly there was a sound of wind. Without spinning, it had already soared into the sky. Looking at the people below him like ants and the mountains like bowls, he felt the world spinning. He could not help but be shocked and subconsciously hugged the crane's neck, not daring to let go. At this moment, he heard a bell-like laughter. "You are such a coward." The voice was like that of a young girl. The king of Ing was shocked. After searching for a while, he realized that it was coming from the crane. He asked curiously, "You can speak?" The white crane laughed lightly. "I was enlightened by the sect leader and got rid of the bone in my throat. Only then can I speak." The king of Ing sighed. "Your supernatural powers are mysterious and unimaginable." Although he knew that all living things in heaven and earth had spirituality and demons were not surprising, he had been in the palace for a long time and had only heard of them. He could not help but take a few more glances out of curiosity. After thinking for a while, he asked, "I heard that there is a giant python on the North Sea. I wonder how does fairy he compare?" The white crane laughed and replied, "I am not worthy of the title of fairy." The Luo family of the North Sea is one of the 8 main tribes under the ancestral court of the demon race. We are the descendants of the ancient sky demon. Before I took human form, I was just a wild crane that knew how to absorb the essence of the sun and moon. How can I be compared to a firefly? This was the first time the king of Ing heard about the 8 main demon tribes. He was puzzled and wanted to ask about it in detail. At this moment, the spiritual crane flapped its wings and flew down rapidly. For a moment he felt a cold wind blowing against his face. He could not open his eyes and his mouth could not speak. After a while, he felt his body sinking slightly. When he opened his eyes, he realized that he had landed on a mountain peak. This place was the highest among the mountains. Not far away, there was a cave with a wide entrance. On both sides of the cliff walls, old vines climbed and twisted. In front of the entrance, the floor was paved with green stones and white jade steps. At the bottom of the steps stood a big-headed boy. At this moment, the white crane said, "Honored guest, we have arrived." The king of Ing gave an "oh" and flipped down from the crane's back. He was looking around when he suddenly heard the sound of wings flapping. When he looked back, he saw that the white crane had turned into a girl with bright eyes and white teeth. The girl smiled at him and flew away on a cloud. In a glimpse, he only had time to see a beautiful back view. He could not help but stare blankly. Jing Yu curled his lips and thought, "Isn't it just a crane demon? What's so special about it?" Although he was cursing in his heart, he was still polite on the surface. He came up and greeted, "Is it your highness, the king of Ing? Please follow me." The king of Ing cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for your trouble, fairy boy." He tidied up his clothes and followed him into the cave. After about 30 steps, the two of them passed through a cave, went around a stone screen, and walked a few dozen steps to the left before they arrived at a spacious cave hall. A young Taoist with eyes as deep as a serene pond and an extraordinary bearing sat on the seat of honor. A middle-aged Taoist with a kind face and big ears sat on the seat of honor beside him. Before he came, he had done his homework and knew that the person in the middle was Zhang Yan and the person beside him was the elder of Hanyuan, Chu Mu Ran. He took a few steps forward and respectfully greeted, "This little King Xiang he greets Master Zhang and Elder Chu." Zhang Yan raised his hand and smiled, "The king of Ing is too courteous. Please take a seat and talk." The king of Ing bowed and thanked him. He straightened his body and sat on a stone stool at the side. Chu Mu Ran chuckled and asked, "Your Highness, the king of Ing did not stay in Chu and instead traveled thousands of miles to come to my Hanyuan. May I know the reason for your visit?" When the king of Ing came out, Madame Zhao had specially reminded him that he should avoid the formalities in the court if possible. Therefore, he did not try to be secretive and said straightforwardly, "I am here for 3 matters." Chu Muran asked, "May I know what those 3 matters are?" The king of Ing said, "The first matter is to repay Master Zhang. Master Zhang killed Rong Juanzhong at the Dragon Pillar and also killed the Golden Spirit Elder, Guardian Xian Yu and the Elder Envoy, a total of 5 people. According to the contract, Zhong Tai should be rewarded with 8 celestial cities. This time, I have brought the Shrewdness Jade Plate, Flag Seal and Golden Booklet. Master Zhang, please take a look." He took out a jade box from his sleeve and presented it to Chu Muran with both hands above his head. Chu Muran waved his hand and received it. He removed the lid of the box and took out the golden booklet. He opened it and saw that the 8 celestial cities were all south of the Shen House. They were not separated from each other and could be connected to the Shen House and the celestial cities. He was overjoyed and nodded at Zhang Yan. Seeing that he accepted it, the king of Ing calmed down and stood up from the chair. He nodded and said, "The second matter was ordered by Sect Master Qiao to apologize on his behalf." Zhang Yan raised his eyebrows and asked, "What does Sect Master Qiao mean?" The king of Ing did not get up from the ground. He lowered his head and said, "When I came out, Sect Master Qiao had instructed me that Song Quan did not know the gravity of the situation and acted on his own. He dared to make all sorts of excuses to stop Master Zhang from obtaining the elixir. Now he has ordered his execution. If Master Zhang wants to see his head, I can bring it over immediately." How could Zhang Yan not see that Song Quan dared to do so because there must be someone behind him? Most likely it was one of Sect Master Qiao's favorite concubines. However, since he had already obtained the elixir and moved the entire Ox Horn Hall's treasury here, he had no intention to pursue the matter further. He waved his sleeve and smiled, "There's no need. I did not take this matter to heart. King of Ing, please get up. You can bring back the head the way you brought it." The king of Ing nodded and bowed before he got up and heaved a sigh of relief. When Madame Zhao returned to her residence, she found out that the treasury was taken by Zhang Yan. She was surprised and immediately started investigating the matter. Later on, when he found out that it was Lien Yangzi who did it, he wanted to capture her. But who would have thought that the news was accidentally leaked, and she escaped first? After searching several times, he did not find anything, and he did not know where she went. When Sect Master Qiao returned, he had no choice but to behead Quan Song as an explanation. As for the treasury, the items inside were originally meant to be rewarded to the cultivators from outside the sect. Since it was taken away by Zhang Yan, he might as well treat it as an apology. As for the treasury, the items inside were originally meant to be rewarded to the cultivators from outside the sect. Since it was taken away by Zhang Yan, he might as well treat it as an apology. The real treasures of the past generations were hidden in the belly of the mountain. Even with the sect master's token, it was not something that could be taken away easily. At this point, he revealed a look of gratitude. "If it weren't for immortal Zhang, I'm afraid I would still be shackled and unable to see the sun. I can only give you a treasure map left by my ancestor." He opened his mouth and took out a wax pill. After crushing it, he pulled out a foot-thin piece of silk cloth and handed it over. "Shenren, please take a look." Zhang Yan took it and looked at it. His eyes shone with curiosity. He put it down and asked, "How did the king of Ing obtain this treasure map?" The king of Ing cupped his hands towards the sky and said, "The royal family of Great Chu is the descendant of Grandmaster Zhongtai Jinzhong. This map was passed down by the Grandmaster. When it was passed down to my father, because he doted on the youngest son of the king of Ing, he bestowed this map to him." Chu Muran interrupted, "Other than the king of Ing, does anyone else know about this?" The king of Ing thought for a while and said, "It seems that Imperial Tutor Hui Xian knows a little and tried to ask me a few times. I was afraid that he would covet it, so I made a fake map. After this map was stolen, he never mentioned it again." Chapter 707. Chu Muran glanced at the map and thought to himself, "Passed down by Grandmaster Jinzhong? But I don't know what it is. Even Hui Xian coveted it, so it must be something extraordinary." Zhang Yan noticed Chu Muran's expression and did not intend to hide it from him. He said, rumor has it that before Grandmaster Damu ascended, he hid a true weapon in the North Sea. This map points to the place where the treasure is kept. Chu Muron exclaimed, true weapon? But then he looked at King Ing suspiciously. His meaning was clear. Since it's a true weapon, why didn't Zhongtai take it himself? King Ing was afraid that he would misunderstand and quickly explained the situation. Chu Muron was relieved and said eagerly, Het Shixiang is not a cultivator of this continent. Why not give it a try? Zhang Yan smiled, it's not that easy. He waved his sleeve and swept the map off the table. It floated in front of Chu Muron and said, Junior apprentice brother, take a look. Chu Muron was startled. After a moment of hesitation, he took the map and carefully spread it in front of him. He looked at it for a while and raised his head in surprise. The hidden place is in the old Xianluo sect? Zhang Yan smiled, yes. Chu Muron was disappointed and said, now that the North Sea is occupied by the Python tribe, this treasure is not something that can be obtained now. What's the use of this map? It will only burn my hands. King Ing heard his unfriendly tone and panicked. After the Dragon Pillar tournament, although Xianyu was destroyed, many of the original guardians and envoys were still around. If he wanted to mix the disciples of the two sects, he would have to rely on Zhang Yan for many things. If this matter was self-defeating, he knew what would happen to him. He wanted to defend himself but did not know what to say. He was so anxious that his forehead was sweating. Zhang Yan saw that he was restless and comforted him with a smile. Xiang Zhanfu has already told us the details. He will not blame King Ing. King Ing said, I don't dare, I don't dare. Zhang Yan saw that he was still panicking. He thought for a while and said, someone, find a secluded courtyard for King Ing. Settle down. Jing Yu walked up and said, Your Royal Highness Ing Wang. Please follow me. The King of Ing stood up anxiously, bowed and left. After he left, Chu Muron said with a regretful expression, I thought that I, Han Yuan, would be able to obtain a supreme treasure. Unexpectedly, it was the flower in the mirror, the moon in the water. Zhang Yan smiled faintly and said, not necessarily. If you really want to give it a try, it's not impossible. It's just that the time isn't right yet. Besides, with this map in my hands, there's no need to worry about the treasure escaping. There's no need to rush to get it. Chu Muron nodded repeatedly and said, Senior Marshal Brother is wise. Real treasures have their own spirits. If it is really fated with me, I will definitely be able to obtain it. After all, the Python tribe is a powerful force. It is best not to provoke them if possible. Zhang Yan smiled faintly and did not deny it. He only asked, have you completed the task that I asked you to do? Chu Muron quickly said, I have followed Senior Marshal Brother's instructions. In the past few days, I have built hundreds of altars along the cliff shore from west to east. I have also set up a formation to lock the gate. I have also moved 12 sects to this place so that they can guard the gate. Zhang Yan said approvingly, you have done a good job, I will reward you. Chu Muron quickly said, I dare not take credit for such a small matter. Zhang Yan said, Junior Marshal Brother Chu, there is no need to belittle yourself. I have been away from the sect for several months. You and your two junior marshal brothers have managed the sect well without any oversight. I have seen it with my own eyes. You can choose a few treasures from the mountain storehouse. Compared to when Zhang Yan first arrived, the Cold Abyss sect had expanded more than 10 times. Chu Muron had also recruited many disciples, but the number of treasures he could bestow to them was too little. When he saw Zhang Yan move a storehouse, he wanted to ask for a few treasures, but he found it difficult to ask. Now that he heard it, he could not help but be overjoyed and said, Thank you, Senior Marshal Brother. Thank you, Senior Marshal Brother. Zhang Yan smiled and said, I will be going into closed-door cultivation for the next few days. The affairs of the sect will still be managed by the three of you. Chu Muron was startled. He thought about it and said, Senior Marshal Brother, Cold Abyss sect now has 8 more immortal cities. I don't know how to deal with them. Senior Marshal Brother, please tell me. He was half happy and half worried about the sudden appearance of 8 immortal cities. According to the situation in Dongshan continent, Each immortal city should have at least one Yuanying perfected person in charge to ensure that nothing would go wrong. However, Zhang Yan was the only one in the Cold Abyss sect who had such a cultivation. Even with the addition of Zhang Boyan, the lame Taoist, and Song Chuyuan, they only took up half of the remaining 4 cities. If someone was plotting against them, they would not be able to look after them. Zhang Yan waved his sleeves and said, after the battle at the Gathering of Dragon Pillars, many of the northern Yuanying cultivators were injured or killed. Cold Abyss sect does not have any strong enemies outside, so there is no need to worry about this. Although he said that, Chu Muran was still a little worried. As they were talking, a boy came in with a letter in his hand. He said, Sect Master, there is a letter from a Taoist. He said that he wants to give it to Sect Master personally. Zhang Yan raised his eyebrows and released his spiritual opportunity to check. Seeing that the letter was not tampered with, he used his mana to grab it. He opened it and saw that there was no signature on the letter. He asked, what does the Taoist look like? The boy said, that person left in a hurry, so the disciples guarding the gate did not see him clearly. After he sent the letter, he went to the extreme heaven. He seemed to be a perfected person. Zhang Yan's eyes moved slightly. He opened the letter and shook it open. After a few glances, he couldn't help but smile and pass it to Chu Muran. He said, Junior Marshal Brother, take it and read it yourself. Chu Muran took it in surprise, but when he read it, his eyes widened. The person who wrote the letter was the former chief envoy of Shenyue Mountain, Chu Nuji. In the letter, he said that as long as Zhang Yan no longer interfered with the matters between the 2 sects, he was willing to pay tribute every year. After reading it, he stood up and bowed. He sighed deeply and said, Today, I know Senior Marshal Brother's prowess. Junior Marshal Brother's previous worries were for nothing. Dongsheng South, Yuzue Mountain. Under a green pine tree, Hui Xian Grandmaster was playing chess with a green-faced, long-bearded Taoist. In less than a moment, the Taoist gave a strange cry and gave up. He then cursed a few times and tidied up the chessboard, wanting to play again. Hui Xian Grandmaster put the rui in his hand and stopped him. He said, Fellow Taoist, you have lost 7 games in a row. You have lost 3 talismans and 4 bottles of pills. Let's call it a day. The green-faced Taoist was not willing. He glared at him and said, No, I have to win a game against you today no matter what. Hui Xian Grandmaster shook his head. In the past, the green-faced Taoist had never won a game of chess. Today, for some reason, the green-faced Taoist insisted on winning a game. It was as if he felt his talismans and pills were too hot to handle. He sighed and said, You know you can't do it, but you still do it. Why do you have to be like this? The green-faced Taoist looked at him and said, Yes, I know I can't do it, but I still do it. Why do I have to be like this? Hui Xian Grandmaster made a sound of agreement and raised his head to look at him. After a long time, he sighed and said, Fellow Taoist, you have put in a lot of effort. The green-faced Taoist snorted and said coldly, If it wasn't for the fact that you saved my disciple's life, whether you live or die, what does it have to do with me? He stretched out his hand to push the rui away and swept the chess pieces on the ground. He got up and walked towards a cave abode on the cliff. Hui Xian Grandmaster was expressionless. He knocked the rui on the chessboard and all the chess pieces returned to their positions. He muttered to himself, But one more game. At this moment, there was a flash of light in the sky. Chu Changji landed in front of him and said, Master, disciple is back. Hui Xian Grandmaster made a sound of agreement and asked, How is it? Chu Changji said angrily, Bai Daoren is not like the others. He treats disciple with good tea and good wine, but every time we talk about serious matters, he always evades the topic. When disciple came back, he said it's not that he doesn't want to help, it's just that with people like Cult Master Han Yuan around, it's hard for him to persuade the senior and junior brothers in the sect. Hui Xian Grandmaster was not surprised and said indifferently, He said the truth. He originally wanted to instigate the 3 southern sects to pressure Zhongtai and then think of a way to lure the Python tribe in. But during the battle at the Dragon Pillar, The supernatural powers and mana that Zhang Yan revealed greatly shocked the cultivators of the 3 southern sections. Before they understand his attitude, no one dared to relax. Hui Xian Grand Master's eyes revealed a frightening radiance and said, "Looks like if we want to succeed, we must get rid of that Taoist Zhang." Chu Changji said, "Master is waiting for the Python tribe to ask for help?" Hui Xian Grand Master shook his head and said, "It's too late. They can wait, but I can't." He had cultivated for 900 years and his lifespan was almost up. If he did not find the opportunity to break through, he would definitely have to reincarnate. But he did not come from a big sect and did not have the method of inheritance. He could only place his hopes on the true weapon left by founding Master Daimu. He got Luo Jiangyu's promise that as long as he could help the Python tribe settle in Dongxing, not only would he help him get the true weapon, he could also ask the tribe's elder ancestor Luo Mengzi to come forward and subdue him. After all, this was a chance. If he succeeded, he would reach the sky in one step. He was a person who cherished his body and was not willing to risk his life to fight with others. But the situation forced him to make a decision. Chu Changji could also feel Hui Xian Grand Master's determination, but he was a little perturbed. Zhang Yan killed over 20 Yuanian cultivators in a row and defeated Rong Juanzhong in a head-on fight. Just thinking about it made one shudder. Other than the people from the heavenly abode coming forward, he really could not think of anyone who could stop him. Hui Xian Grand Master said, "As long as that Taoist Zhang has not achieved the heavenly abode, then there will be weaknesses. I have already found a plan to get rid of him." Chu Changji said, "How does Benefactor want to do it?" Hui Xian Grand Master said, "I want to set up a trap and lure this person here. Then I will invite 2 Taoist friends who have similar skills to me to get rid of this person together." This idea sounded ordinary, but as long as the plan was too ingenious, not only was it not easy to execute, there could not be any mistakes. Therefore, the success of the plan depended on whether one could grasp the crux of the matter. Chu Changji thought for a while and said, "Benefactor, there are 2 difficulties here. One is how to lure that Taoist Zhang to take the bait, and the other is where to find the people who will cooperate with us." Hui Xian Grand Master said in a deep voice, "A few days ago, Zhongtai sect sent a letter saying that Xiao Huanzhuan and that Zhao Ru are searching for 3 spiritual herbs to please that Taoist Zhang. I think that these 3 spiritual herbs must be extremely important to him and we can do something about it. As for the people who will cooperate with us, I have already thought of 2 people, but it will not be easy to invite them. I will need to pay them a visit personally." Chapter 708. After a day, Hui Xian Old Ancestor bade farewell to the green-faced Taoist and set off with Chu Changji towards the south. Half a month later, the terrain below them gradually changed from the undulating mountain range to a vast plain. After traveling for a few more days, a towering and strange cliff appeared in front of them. Behind the cliff, there was water pouring down, crashing into the deep ravine below. The water vapor rolled and gurgled out. On the other side, it looked like it was chiseled by an axe or chopped by a knife. It was flat and straight. Dozens of giant eagles with wingspans of 70 to 80 feet built their nests on the cliff. Below, the trees were lush and weeds were overgrown. Snakes and pythons with a circumference of 10 feet could be seen slithering on the ground. Looking over, there was a line of white in the distant sky, the bluish green like it was washed. There was the sound of waves crashing into the shore. Hui Xian Old Ancestor stopped the escaping light and after taking a few glances, he pointed and said, "It is here. Further south is South Vast Ocean Boundary." Chu Changji focused and suddenly his expression changed. "Teacher, there is such a heavy demonic aura here." Hui Xian Old Ancestor said in a deep voice, "This place is called White Flood Dragon Stream. There is a flood dragon in the deep pool at the bottom. When I first became Yuanying, to refine a magic treasure, I came with a few Taoist friends to slay the flood dragon. However, this evildoer is too cunning and tough. The talismans and swords in our hands are unable to harm it. There were a few times when we could not take care of it. Now that hundreds of years have passed, this old flood dragon's skills must have become more profound. However, as long as we do not provoke it, It will not find trouble with us. Chu Changji said in surprise, the person that teacher mentioned, could it be that he is staying here because of this flood dragon? Hui Xian old ancestor shook his head, not so. After Fu Yang sect was defeated, this person was afraid of being chased by our 5 sects and hid here. He wanted to borrow the power of this flood dragon to avoid calamity, and that white flood dragon also wanted to borrow him to defend against external enemies. The man and the serpent helped each other, and thus they avoided several calamities. However, I have not seen him for over 100 years and don't know if he is still here. Luckily, he has 2 disciples who are natives of this place. Even if he left, we can still find his whereabouts. The 2 of them went around the waterfall and turned towards the east of the cliff. There was a hill that looked like it was shaved off. And in the middle, it looked like it was cut into 3 sections by a giant sword, revealing a deep ravine. There were 3 sections of vine bridges connecting them. On one side of the cliff, there was an exquisitely renovated grass hut. Seeing this scene, old ancestor Hui Xian's expression relaxed slightly. This person is still here. Chu Changji looked around and saw many green-skinned gourds hanging from the ropes. He didn't know what kind of rare fruit it was. The color was glossy. The water was smooth and round, emitting waves of brilliance. From time to time, the pleasing sound of rocks being struck could be heard. He couldn't help but look over curiously. However, upon closer inspection, he was horrified. The gourd actually had faces growing on it. Some were happy, some were sad, some were worried, some were annoyed, some were angry, some were confused, and so on and so forth. Hui Xian old ancestor frowned and knocked on his back with his rui, reminding him, "Disciple, don't look at it too much. That is the 9 hearts 6 desires gourd. If you look at it for too long, your soul will be taken away by it. Even if you are saved, your mind will not be clear and you will become a walking corpse." Chu Changji couldn't help but shiver when he heard the reminder. In just this short while, his heart was already shaken. He hurriedly circulated his inner qi and collected his mind, not looking at the gourd again. Hui Xian old ancestor sighed silently. His master was a wandering cultivator and the techniques that he passed down had no use against evil and ghostly things. If he was taught the proper techniques of Shenmen, his mind would always be stable, and why would he be afraid of this item? At most, he would be able to recover after a moment of absent-mindedness. From the start of his cultivation, he was determined to achieve the great Tao. However, this path was really too difficult. From a young alchemist boy to the 3rd great cultivator of Yuanying, he had gone through many hardships to get his current cultivation. 1,000 years of hard work. If it were to turn to dust like this, he would not be willing. Even if there was a sliver of opportunity, he had to try and fight for it. At this moment, he saw that Chu Changji was fine and said, "There are many filthy formations in this valley. Your cultivation is not enough, so you don't have to go. I will go and see this person alone." Chu Changji hurriedly agreed. Hui Xian old ancestor lowered the traveling light and slowly descended. The restriction placed here was very simple and crude. He used the Rui scepter to lightly sweep over it and opened up a path ahead. When he reached the bottom, he saw a giant man with an ugly face. His clothes were open, and he used a fan to cover his face. His limbs were swollen, and he was sleeping soundly on a flat boulder. Hui Xian old ancestor used the Rui to knock twice on his head to wake him up and said, "Sure Nu, is your master around?" The giant man shook his head and opened his eyes in a daze. He stared at the person in front of him, and after a while, he realized that he recognized him and said, "Yes, yes. Yesterday Master spoiled a furnace of pills and is very angry." "Darn, you better not provoke him." Hui Xian old ancestor made a sound of acknowledgement and ignored him. He walked straight to the front of the grass hut, but he didn't dare to stand too close. He stood 100 feet away and asked loudly, "Is Taoist Ji around?" After a short while, a gust of ghostly white wind swept out and condensed into a gray-robed scholar. This person was around 40 years old and his face was gloomy and cold. His temples were slightly white. He used an extremely unfriendly gaze to size up Hui Xian old ancestor and said, "What are you doing here?" Hui Xian old ancestor cupped his hands and said, "How is Taoist Ji recently?" Ji Daoren snorted and said, "What's good about it? Just waiting for death." He took another look at him and moved aside. "Come in and sit." Hui Xian old ancestor bowed again and entered the grass hut. His gaze turned and he sat down on a clean rattan chair. Two stiff-faced, white-clothed females came out from the inner room and brought over a cup of steaming hot tea. Ji Daoren said impatiently, "Speak, what's the matter? I'm in a hurry to concoct medicine and have no time to chat with you." Hui Xian old ancestor pondered for a moment and said, "I would like to ask Taoist Ji to help me deal with someone." Ji Daoren said, "Who?" Hui Xian old ancestor did not hide anything and told him everything that Zhang Yan had done since he came to Dongsheng continent. At last, he cupped his hands and said with a solemn expression, "This person is an obstacle to my path of Tao and needs to be eliminated. Please help me, Taoist Ji." Reverend Yun's face turned solemn and said, "Who is this person?" Hui Xian old ancestor said, "This person is not a Taoist cultivator of Dongsheng continent but a visitor from another continent. Reverend Ji, you don't have to worry about someone coming to seek revenge. This person has precious treasures on him. Just looking at the profound weapons that others have seen, there are 3 to 4 of them. If Taoist Ji can..." Before he could finish, Ji Daoren waved his hand and interrupted him, "You can use these words to bully those juniors. There's no need to brag in front of me. Tell me the truth. If I help you this time, what benefits can you give me?" Hui Xian old ancestor was silent for a moment and said, "At our level, it's nothing more than finding a method to form a cave. Even though I found a fated chance, I can't tell Taoist Ji about it. However, I can point out a clear path for you. It depends on whether Taoist Ji is willing or not." Ji Daoren said, "Tell me about it." Hui Xian old ancestor said in a deep voice, "Under the dragon pillar of Dongsheng continent, there is a Taoist book written by Patriarch Damu. There is a scroll of Taoist manual written by Grand Master Daimu. Now Zhong Tai has obtained it and is trying to break the prohibition spell. I can help you to get it first." Ji Ren sneered. "Taoist book of Dam. Such a cheap thing. Why don't you get it yourself?" "You are here to sue me?" Hui Xian old ancestor said seriously, "I am Chu's imperial preceptor, a person with roots, and I have received Reverend He's grace. It is not my wish to fall out with Zhong Tai." Ji Daoren stared at him and chuckled, "No, it's not that you can't get it, it's that you can't confirm that there is a Taoist book under the dragon pillar. Am I right?" Not waiting for Hui Xian to reply, he smiled strangely, "Even so, I can promise you this." Hui Xian old ancestor was full of suspicions when he heard this. Could it be that there was really something under the dragon pillar that he didn't know about? Ji Daoren asked again, "You said that the 2 of you don't have the confidence to win. Then where can we find the other person?" Although the Dongsheng continent was large, there were only a few cultivators of the 3rd tier of the nascent soul realm, and they were all famous. The few that he knew were all in the 3 southern sects, so it was impossible for them to rope them in. Hui Xian old ancestor raised his rui and pointed on the table. 3 words floated out. Ji Daoren took a look and narrowed his eyes. Shao Tsang Jing. Shenwu Mountain, Songzhu Peak. 10 days after Zhang Yan returned to the sect, Song Chuyuan and the lame Taoist also returned to Han Yuan sect. Only Zhang Boyan's whereabouts were unknown. The 2 of them entered the sect and went up to the peak to greet Zhang Yan. After greeting, Zhang Yan invited the 2 of them to sit down and said, "In a few days, I will go into closed-door cultivation. I will have to trouble the 2 of you to guard the sect." Song Chuyuan hurriedly said, "We don't dare to let down Reverend's trust." The lame Taoist also said, "Shenwu Mountain stretches across the north of Tian Bay. It sits on the majestic mountains and dangerous rivers. Now that there is a restriction, if we don't guard it well, we won't have the face to see Reverend again." Zhang Yan nodded. With the 2 of them guarding the sect and with the help of the restriction formation, even if enemies came, they would be able to handle it. He used 3 days to settle all the trifling matters in the sect. Then he found Fu Baoxing and carefully taught him the method of opening meridians and breaking through closed-door training. After that, he sealed the abode and went into closed-door training. First, he checked the spirit herbs at hand. Every single one of them was checked carefully. After checking that there were no mistakes, he rolled up his sleeves and threw all of them into the furnace in front of him. Then he used his magic power to ignite the furnace fire. This process took a long time. About 30 days later, the furnace was boiling rapidly. The air was turbulent and clouds were surging. Zhang Yan's expression was solemn. This was an extremely crucial step before forming the pill. If he made a mistake, even though all his previous efforts would not be wasted, the effect of the pill would be greatly reduced. He calmed his heart and qi and stabilized the furnace fire. Another 6 days passed. There was a loud cracking sound in the cave abode. The furnace lid instantly broke into pieces. A gust of pure spirit qi rushed out from the furnace and dozens of pills shot out. Zhang Yan's eyes lit up. With a shout, he waved his sleeves and all of them were sucked over. He opened his palm and dozens of flawless white fruits that looked like ice jade were floating in the air. When he looked closely, there were a total of 66 of them. Not including what he got earlier, the white moon jade fruits in front of him could support him for 66 years. To cultivate the Yuanjin Dharmakaya, he still needed a lot of them. However, since Zhong Tai was willing to search for these 3 spirit herbs for him, he could save a lot of effort. He did not hesitate. With a flick of his finger, he kept a white moon jade fruit into the strong cloud. Then he attracted Jun Yang's qi essence. The 2 qi intertwined and slowly entered his body. After refining one, he didn't stop. He continued to refine the second, third, fourth, and so on. After refining 25 of them, a golden glow emerged from his body, radiating brilliance in all directions. His eyes, ears, mouth, and nose were all shimmering with golden light. The top of his head was misty, and the 3 clouds gradually gathered together, faintly showing signs of merging into one. P.S. Chapter 709. Mount Shao, Great Hall of the Golden Beldu. Shershuan stood at the bottom of the stairs, his back ramrod straight as he said loudly, "Father, in the Battle of Tribute Valley City 2 days ago, this child and a few elders killed a total of 5 Xianyu protectors. Only Chunyuji and 2 others escaped. Most of the elders in the sect were present at this moment." Elder Lin coughed and said, "Young sect master, Xianyu has long since perished. There's no longer a protector." Du Shershuan snorted, as if he couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him. Elder Bai bowed to sect master Qiao and said, "Senior brother, after this little brother investigated, these 3 people fled towards the eastern boundless sea realm. Right now, they're hiding in a remote immortal city called Ju Luo. Do you need this little brother to send people to pursue and annihilate them?" While Zhang Yan was in seclusion, the Zhongtai sect sent disciples to gather immortal cities and pacify the people. Before he died, Rong Juanzhong had made a plan to expel the 8 envoys and protectors from the sect. At the same time, he had asked the 3 southern sects to lend a helping hand and try to gain a foothold before plotting a plan to restore the sect. Chunyuji had sent disciples to the south several times, but these 3 sects had misgivings because Zhang Yan was helping Zhongtai from behind. Thus, none of them had tried to take chestnuts out of the fire. After more than 20 years, they were gradually forced into a corner by Zhongtai. In a battle the day before, 5 Yuanian cultivators had died. The remaining people could only take their disciples and flee. Sect Master Qiao weighed the pros and cons and finally shook his head. The winds and waves of the eastern boundless sea are high, and dragons often appear in the sea. If these 3 people hide in the immortal city and don't come out with restrictions, it will be difficult to break through unless we mobilize the strength of the sect. Since we've already chased them out of the Dongsheng continent, the northern lands are in my hands. There's no need to worry about them for now." At this moment, apart from the original Xianyu mountain gate that Jinren he hadn't taken down, the rest of the land had been occupied by Zhongtai. And the people of Zhongtai-zhou had long concluded that once Xianyu was destroyed, there was no need for this Jinren he to continue holding on. He would definitely reincarnate in a few decades. As long as they waited patiently, this important land would be Zhongtai's sooner or later. Du Shishuan raised his eyebrows and cupped his fists. Father, you need to remove the roots when you are cutting the grass. Elder Lin cast a sidelong glance at Du Shishuan and said, Young sect master is nothing more than a few stray dogs. Hiding in he gang and struggling at death's door, what kind of storm can they stir up? Sect leader Qiao nodded and said, Although the two sects have merged, our sect is not without worries. If all the elders go out, who will take care of these immortal cities? Elder Yin also said, Senior brother, the most important thing now is to organize the Xian Yu Dao manual. If we can evolve the divine arts of Patriarch Dami, Zhong Tai, might be able to monopolize Dongxing one day. Everyone in the hall nodded in agreement. It was just that the two sects had been separated for thousands of years, and many of Xian Yu's cultivation methods and Dao techniques had already changed. If they wanted to straighten out the clues and give it to their disciples to cultivate, this was not something that could be done in 10 or 20 years, but at least 100 or 200 years. Du Shishuan saw that they all spoke one after another, all of them opposing him to kill. Anger appeared on his face, and he suddenly turned around and strode out of the hall. Sect leader Qiao did not stop him, but instructed the disciple beside him, Later, go call Sun to the back hall. That disciple immediately left the side hall. Before Du Shishuan left the golden platform, he was called to guess that he had something to say to him in private, so he went to the back hall and waited for half an hour before he was called in. After entering the hall, he saw sect leader Qiao and Madame Zhao sitting in the hall, so he came up to greet them. Sect leader Qiao saw that he looked angry, as if he was still brooding over what had happened just now. He looked at Madame Zhao, and the latter understood. She opened her red lips and said, This child does not need to blame your father. He had his reasons for doing this. Du Shishuan took a step forward, cupped his fists and said, Father, Chunyu Ji and the others are Zhong Tai's greatest trouble. If we do not get rid of them today, there will be trouble in the future. What could be more important than this? Sect leader Qiao sighed and said, How could I not know what this child is saying? It's just that there has been a difficult matter in the sect recently, and we cannot leave our hands for even a moment. After this matter is settled, we will think of a suitable time to go out to sea. Du Shishuan thought for a moment and asked, Father, are you talking about that dragon pillar? Sect leader Qiao nodded and said, Yes. At this point, his face slightly darkened. The three sects are pressing hard, and it is easy to stay still, but not easy to move. After more than 20 years, the restrictive formation in the dragon pillar had gradually disappeared, revealing a stone mansion inside. There were still a few scattered restrictive formations on it, and even if they did not try to remove them within a few months, they would disappear on their own. Everyone speculated that even if the mansion did not contain founding Master Demi's legacy, it must be an ancient immortal's cave. This matter was supposed to be a secret, but who would have thought that the three southern sects found out about it, and sent an envoy to say that if there is a heavenly treasure, it does not belong to Zhong Tai alone. Sect leader Qiao knew that Zhong Tai was strong on the outside, but weak on the inside. He looked strong on the outside, but in reality he was weak. With the three sects joining forces, he would not be able to resist them, and if he gave them an excuse, it would not be a good thing, so he could only drag it on and not lift the seal. Du Shishuan said, Why not invite uncle-in-law and Zhang Zhenren over, this child and the two of them together? Even if the three sects came, we would not be afraid. Sect leader Qiao sighed and said, Zhang Zhenren has been in seclusion for more than 20 years, and did not show his face. I sent a few gifts back, but did not manage to find out when he will come out. As for your uncle-in-law, father does not trust him. Previously, because of the Python tribe incident, he suspected that Elder Hui Xian had other plans, so he ignored him for the past 20 years, and Hui Xian also did not return to the mountain, so the rumors of their discord spread like wildfire, and everyone knew about it. Lady Zhao advised, Husband, Hui Xian was thinking of Zhong Tai at that time, and did not have any bad intentions. Besides, he is already at the end of his life. What other plans can he have? Why not invite him back, give him more benefits, and get rid of the previous grudges, so that we can use him? Sect leader Qiao was silent. At this moment, a disciple hurriedly came to report, Sect leader, Yesterday 2 people barged into the Dragon Pillar Forbidden Grounds and tried to open the formation to enter the stone residence. Sect leader Qiao was shocked and stood up. What? What happened to the stone residence? The day before yesterday, it was Du Shixuan who led the group to attack Chunyuji, and to ensure victory, almost all the Yuanian cultivators in the sect were sent out, so there was only one elder guarding the Dragon Pillar, and it could be said to be very empty. That disciple said, "The stone residence is safe." After a bitter fight with Elder Wei, he chased the intruders away and did not let them succeed. Sect leader Qiao said in a deep voice, "Did you find out who the intruders were?" That disciple said, "Elder Wei said that one of the figures was suspected to be Xing Fu Lu Xingjinren, who appeared on the Dragon Pillar." "It's this person?" When sect leader Qiao heard that it was not someone from the 3 southern sects, his heart slightly relaxed, and then he said with slight anger, "This kind of scoundrel dares to bully my Zhongtai." Lady Zhao said, "Husband, sending people to guard the Dragon Pillar is not a long-term solution. Why not set up a formation to prevent outsiders from spying?" Sect leader Qiao waved his hand and said, "How can I not know this? But it's better if the formation is not set up. If it is set up, it will give others the opportunity to gossip. And if the 3 southern sects use this to cause trouble, it will be hard to defend against them." Lady Zhao lowered her head in thought, and after a while, her beautiful eyes lit up as if she had gained some insight, and said, "I have an idea. Maybe it can help husband solve this problem." Sect leader Qiao made an "oh" sound, and said with a smile, "It's rare for lady to have an idea. I want to hear it." Lady Zhao said angrily, "Husband, please don't tease me. Your concubine's plan was based on what happened just now." Sect leader Qiao said, "Lady, please speak." Lady Zhao stretched out her slender finger and said, "Husband, after the 2 sects became one, because priest Zhang is in closed-door cultivation, we have not held a congratulatory banquet. Now that Chunyuji and the others have been chased away, why not use this as an excuse to hold a banquet and invite the cultivators of the 3 sects as guests, and at the banquet, we can discuss how to deal with that immortal abode." Sect leader Qiao said unhappily, "What kind of idea is this? Under the Dragon Pillar there may be a Taoist book written by Master Demi. It must not be given to outsiders." Zhao Furan tugged at his sleeve and said snappily, "Husband, why are you in such a hurry? I have not finished what I wanted to say. I have my reasons for doing so. Since the matter of husband and Hui Xian not being on good terms is known even outside the sect, we might as well go with the flow. During the banquet, we can ask Hui Xian to secretly steal the book." Sect leader Qiao's body shook, as if he had understood something, and quickly sat up straight, and said, "Continue." Lady Zhao's jade face showed some satisfaction and said, "At that time, all the cultivators of my Zhongtai will be at the banquet. If the Taoist book is stolen, the cultivators of the 3 sects will not blame us. After that, I will ask Hui Xian to hide the Taoist book, and I will escape. When I leave, I will make a big fuss, and it will be best if the cultivators of the 3 sects chase after me, and then I will be cleared of suspicion." Sect leader Qiao thought for a while, and felt that this idea was feasible and said, "Will Hui Xian do what I want?" Lady Zhao said, "He does not have much time left. The day of his reincarnation is near, and he is only a disciple. How can he be compared to me, Zhongtai? Is he not afraid that we will find the place of his reincarnation and stop him from entering Tao in his next life? He will have to agree to this, even if he doesn't want to." Sect leader Qiao stood up and walked a few steps with his hands behind his back, as if he was thinking. After a while, he suddenly stopped and turned around and said, "Lady, later you will personally go to Deep Abyss sect. There is no need to ask Zhang Jinren to come down the mountain." Lady Zhao was startled and said, "Husband is asking Zhang Jinren to guard against Hui Xian?" Sect leader Qiao said in a deep voice, "This matter is of great importance. We must guard against it. Moreover, with Zhang Jinren coming, it will be good to intimidate the cultivators of the 3 sects, and not let them have any strange ideas." Lady Zhao nodded and said, "Good, it just so happens that I have found quite a lot of spiritual medicine that Zhang Jinren needs. I will leave tomorrow morning and set off for Deep Abyss." Du Shixuan said, "Your son is willing to go with mother." Sect leader Qiao laughed and said, "If you and your son go together, I think your sincerity is enough." He then turned his head and said to Lady Zhao, "That dragon pillar must not have any more flaws in the next few days. Your husband needs to go and check it again. I will have to trouble Lady Zhao to take care of this matter." Lady Zhao bowed and sent sect leader Qiao out. She chatted with Du Shixuan for a while, and then used the excuse that the time had come and she needed to circulate her internal energy, and returned to the inner hall. When she reached the bed, she said to the maid, "Go and call Chu Changji here." Not long after, Chu Changji came to the front of the bed, and he came up and bowed deeply, saying, "Greetings to Lady Zhao." Lady Zhao said, "Go back and tell your master that I will help him this time, on account of my late sister. I hope that he will not make any stupid moves again." To be continued. Chapter 710. Chu Changji bade farewell to Madame Zhao and left the Golden Bell Hall. He quietly left Hope Sound Mountain and soared into the light, flying southwest. Half a day later, he arrived at a desolate ridge in the western suburbs. Most of the people living here were savages who wore beast skins and ate raw meat and drank blood. Due to the thinness of the spiritual veins, not many cultivators paid attention to it, and it was Hui Xian's temporary residence now. Chu Changji descended on a cloud in front of a cave. He used his spell to open the prohibition spell and walked inside. There were no bright pearls or lamps in the cave, so the light was dim. After a dozen steps, he saw an old Taoist sitting cross-legged on a rock. The old Taoist bowed and said, "Master, your disciple has returned." Hui Xian opened his eyes and said in a deep voice, "Disciple, have you seen Zhao Ru?" When he asked this, even though his expression was still calm, his tone still unconsciously revealed a bit of urgency. Chu Changji replied, "Master, it is as you expected. Madame Zhao has managed to convince sect leader Qiao." Hui Xian heard this and could not hold it in anymore. He stood up and laughed. His eyes looked at the top of the cave and said, "My plan has succeeded." After he decided on the plan to get rid of Zhang Yan, he spent a few months to gather all the manpower. But before he could do anything, he received news that Zhang Yan had sealed his residence and went into seclusion. He had no choice but to wait patiently. Just like that, 25 years had passed. He saw that his lifespan was getting shorter and he did not know when Zhang Yan would come out of seclusion. He was anxious. At this time, when Ji Daoren heard that the Dragon Pillar Prohibition spell was dispelled, he urged him to go down and take the items inside. Because he needed this person's help, it was not good to offend him. He could only order Chu Changji to meet Madame Zhao at the Zhongtai Gate. Madame Zhao's plan that day was actually his. It was a plan for Zhongtai Gate, but it was actually to make it easier for him to obtain the Taoist book. He did not have much hope for this plan. Now that he heard that it succeeded, even though he was usually calm, he could not help but lose his composure at this moment. Chu Changji said, "Master, there is a problem that you have to guard against." Hui Xian calmed himself down and asked, "What's the difficulty?" Chu Changji said, that Xiao Huanzhuan ordered Zhao Ru to go to the divine house to invite that priest Zhang down. It seems like she is trying to prevent Master from playing any tricks. Her actions are really despicable. Hui Xian turned around with his back facing Chu Changji. With a sinister smile, he said, "No, this is a good thing. Perhaps the two difficult matters can be settled at the same time." On the second day after Madame Zhao presented her plan, she prepared a carriage and summoned Du Shixuan. Together with 100 or so maids, they rode the wind and traveled to the Shenwu Mountain. In addition to the mother and son, Fan Yinghui, the owner of the 100 Shadow Sword, one of the 6 famous swords of Fengxiang Sword School, was also with them. As the envoy of the Fengxiang Sword School, she had been ordered to stay in the Zhongtai sect for the past few years. When she heard that Zhao Ru wanted to go to Hanyuan, she also wanted to see what Rong Juanzhong looked like. Therefore, she decided to accompany Zhao Ru. When the mistress of the Zhongtai sect set out, she had her own arrangements and the journey was smooth. After 10 days or so, they arrived at the foot of Tsangzhu Peak. Chu Mu Ran led a few people to wait at the entrance. After greeting each other, they were invited to settle down in the pavilion inside the mountain. The three of them stayed halfway up Songju Peak. From here, the mountain was covered in greenery and the lake was rippling. White cranes and spiritual birds came and went from time to time. Beyond the peak, there was a stretch of mountains like the sea. Further away, there was the magnificent Beima Fury waves. Fan Ninghui looked at the majestic picture and praised, "People's Shenwu mountain stretches across the north of the world. It is the wilderness of the Huang Kingdom. But from what I see now, although it is not as beautiful as Zhongtai's golden mountain moist water, white cauldron overlooking the peak, it is not far off." Madame Zhao, however, felt that it was normal and said, "Excluding our 5 sects, in our Dongshun continent, those who can occupy 3 cities can be considered a big sect. After the Battle of the Dragon Pillars, the Deep Stream sect occupied 9 celestial cities. It is not strange for them to have such a scene." Fan Ninghui looked over and said, "What is rare is that everyone in Hanyuan sect is working hard. There is also someone like Zhang Jinren. In less than 100 years, it will become a big sect again. Sister, please remind sect leader Qiao to be careful." Her words hinted that Hanyuan sect would one day turn the tables. How could Madame Zhao not hear it? She did not mind and said, "Zhang Jinren's supernatural power is indeed extraordinary, but his cultivation is still in the 2nd realm. Let's not talk about whether he can reach that step. Even if he does, it will be a matter of 100 years later. Why worry about it now?" Fan Ninghui said, "When I came here, I heard that Jinren Zheng has been cultivating for 3,000 years. After he passes away, who in your sect will be the needle of calming sea?" Madame Zhao's expression did not change. She said confidently, "Sister, you should know that after Xian Yu's death, his Taoist book is in my hands. All the previous flaws can be filled. When that time comes, why would Zhongtai not prosper?" Fan Ninghui wanted to say more, but at this moment, she heard a commotion at the foot of the mountain. Madame Zhao had also noticed it. She called for her maid and asked, "Go and see what is happening down there." This maid was brought by her from Zhongtai. She was not from Hanyuan sect, so she had to go and ask around. After a while, she turned around and said, "Madam, it is Zhang Jinren's 2 disciples who have been traveling for more than 10 years. They have returned." Fan Ninghui smiled and said, "Sister, you have come at the right time. These 2 Zhang Jinren have returned to the mountain to pay their respects to their masters. This is a good opportunity to ask for their help." Madame Zhao agreed, "Sister, you are right." She instructed her maid, "Go to my jade box and pick a few treasures. Later, come with me to pay a visit to Zhang Jinren's 2 disciples." The Qin country, Nanwu Mountain. A Taoist with a face full of anxiety was flying around the mountain with a child in his arms. He seemed to be looking for something. After a few rounds, he saw a 7-story tower at the foot of the mountain. There was a colorful glow coming from it, but it was covered by a seal, so it was not very clear. If he did not know the location beforehand, he would not have been able to detect it in the mountains. He was happy and thought to himself, "This must be the place that junior brother Feng mentioned." He quickly got down and arrived at the valley. He raised his voice and said, "Is Jinren here? I am Sun Chu from Quantamin. Because my child has been infected with poison, I have come to pay my respects and beg Jinren to help me." He repeated this a few times, but there was no response from the mountain. He couldn't help but become anxious. He looked at the child in his arms. His face was purple and his breathing was getting weaker. He couldn't wait any longer. He gritted his teeth and pulled out his sword, wanting to force his way in. However, at this moment, the restrictive formation in front of him suddenly rippled like waves. A moment later, the barrier dispersed, revealing the pagoda inside. He was overjoyed and hurriedly jumped inside. Just a few hundred feet away, he saw a ferocious-looking, green-eyed, yellow-robed Taoist standing in front of him. There was a faint ominous glint in his eyes. He didn't look like a good person. He couldn't help but be startled and subconsciously stopped. He hesitated for a moment before asking, "Are you Master Zhang?" Zhang Boyan looked at the child in his arms and said, "Another one who has been infected with poison." At most, this child will not be able to keep his life. When Sinchu heard this, he didn't care about anything else and hurriedly said, "As long as Taoist can save my child's life, I will give you a big gift to thank you." Zhang Boyan smiled strangely and used a spell. A yellow smoke rose from the ground and swept the child over. He then turned around and entered the tower. He said, "Wait here. I will send him out in an hour." Sinchu had a grateful look on his face. He bowed repeatedly and said, "Thank you, Taoist, thank you." Zhang Boyan went into the pagoda, took out a newly refined pill, and fed it into the child's mouth. Then he infused some spiritual energy into the child. After a short while, the child's mouth and nose spurted out wisps of black foul gas. As the gas came out, his face gradually regained its color. He waved his sleeve and turned the foul gas in the room into a drop of black water. He held it in his palm and carefully sensed it. He thought to himself, "This poison is not the gas of the netherworld river, nor is it the poisonous gas of the earth lung. What is hidden under the quantum inn?" Zhang Yan had found out that the great underworld patriarch's seal was under the quantum inn, so he asked Zhang Boyan to come here and watch his every move. But as soon as he arrived, he found that there was a poisonous gas coming out of the area within 100 miles. He was an elder of the netherworld spring sect, so he had a deep understanding of the various kinds of dark river gas underground. Normally, the poisonous gas under the earth lung would mostly disperse when it came into contact with the blazing sun. There was no poison like this. Now, other than the area around the quantum inn, there were no signs of birds or beasts in the rest of the mountain. Coincidentally, because he wanted to find out what kind of foul gas this was, he saved a passing quantum inn half a month ago. But after this incident, the cultivators in the courtyard found out that there was a Taoist master outside the mountain who could cure this poison, so many people came to ask for help. An hour later, he walked out of the tower. He waved his sleeve and sent the child out with the yellow gas. Sinchu quickly took it and looked down. He saw that the child's breathing was even and he was sleeping soundly. His little face had also regained some color. He couldn't help but let out a big sigh of relief. He smiled gratefully at Zhang Boyan and said, "Thank you for your help, Taoist master." Zhang Boyan said, "May I ask, where did this poisonous miasma come from?" Sinchu hesitated for a while and said, "You saved my son's life, so you shouldn't hide anything. It's just that this matter involves a secret of our sect, so I don't dare to disclose it to outsiders." Zhang Boyan didn't wait for him to finish and interrupted him with a wave of his hand. He said disdainfully, "I'm not interested in knowing about your sect's matters. It's just that if a normal cultivator breathes in a little bit of this poisonous miasma and isn't cured, his life will be in danger within a day or two. Even if there is a cultivator with a high level of cultivation, after a long time, he still won't be able to withstand it. And from what I see, the poisonous gas is getting worse day by day. If we don't get rid of it in a few days, you will have to come to beg for help." Senchu was shocked, but after pondering for a while, he raised his head and looked at him with a burning gaze. He said doubtfully, "Since this poisonous miasma is so powerful, why did Taoist master stay here and not leave?" Zhang Boyan said, "What I've refined is special. The extremely poisonous things in the underground are evil medicine to you, but to me, it's a good product for refining qi and refining treasures." Sinchu sensed that the qi on his body was obscure, deep and gloomy. It was different from ordinary Shenmen, so he immediately believed most of it. He sighed and said, "If I could leave, I would have left long ago. Why wait until now?" At this point, he thought of something and looked at Zhang Boyan. He said with some expectation, "Why don't you invite Zhenren to my sect?" When Zhang Boyan heard this, a few strange green lights appeared in his eyes. He laughed and said, "Then I'll respectfully accept." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.